At the age of 5, I couldn't learn calculus, and my father, a math professor, and my mother, a physics prodigy, deemed me a mentally deficient failure. They quickly had my genius little sister. When my sister was 4, she casually solved a conjecture my father had scribbled on a draft paper, and they decided to take her to a big city more suited for her development. They abandoned me in my hometown like a piece of old furniture. I grabbed my mother's pant leg, using all my strength, only to be met with a cold, "Sunyan, don't hold us back from starting our new life." They didn't know. I wasn't stupid, I just despised their twisted elite standards. After they left, I picked up the keyboard. 10 years later, their painstaking Alios project was on the brink of collapse, desperately in need of rescue by a mysterious investor, and that investor's codename happened to be S. When they stand before me, begging for funds like 2 dogs, I will make them personally experience what a true dimensional reduction strike feels like. Chapter 1. Cold raindrops dripped down from the eaves, shattering into tiny splashes on the bluestone slabs. I am 5 years old, kneeling on the cold ground, facing a small blackboard covered densely with integral symbols. My father, Su Shizhe, stands before me. His eyes behind the lenses devoid of any warmth. He points at the blackboard with a pointer, his voice as cold as ice. "Sunyan, I've taught you 3 times. Why do you still not understand? This is just the most basic Lagrange mean value theorem. Your sister understood it at a glance." I stared at those twisted symbols, like black worms crawling back and forth before my eyes, burrowing into my head and tangling into a mess. My head ached, and my stomach churned in waves. "Dad, I can't learn it," I whispered, my voice trembling with tears. "Useless." The word slipped from his lips, light as air, yet it struck my heart like a hammer. Mom, Chin Man, walked out from the inner room, holding my little sister, Suyu, who had just turned 4, in her arms. Suyu was wearing a beautiful princess dress, her little face as delicate as carved jade. She rested on Mom's shoulder, her pitch-black eyes watching me curiously, with a hint of innate, Victor-like pity in her gaze. "Brother is so silly," she said in her babyish voice. Chin Man didn't argue. Instead, she gently patted Suyu on the back and said softly, "Yeah, don't look at him. Staring too long will make you dumb." She didn't even glance at me, speaking directly to Su Shizhe. "Shizhe, don't waste any more time on him. The offer from Beicheng has come through. We'll take Yaya and leave next week." Su Shizhe nodded and put away the pointer. The way he looked at Suyu was completely different from the way he looked at me. It was a gaze reserved for a priceless treasure, brimming with pride, adoration, and boundless expectation. But when he looked at me, it was like looking at a stone by the roadside. No, even less than a stone. A stone had never disappointed him. They began packing their luggage. The expensive books, the delicate instruments, and the countless beautiful clothes and toys bought for Suyu. My belongings were just a few old clothes, carelessly stuffed into a cardboard box in the corner, untouched by anyone. I was like a puppet with all its strings cut, kneeling there in a daze until my legs went numb and lost all feeling. I knew I was about to be abandoned. On the day of departure, the rain stopped, but the sky remained overcast. A black sedan was parked at the entrance. The driver loaded their luggage piece by piece into the trunk. Su Shizhe and Chin Man held Suyu's hands, preparing to get into the car from start to finish. They didn't say a single word to me, didn't give me a hug, and didn't even glance back at me. I was like the silent old locust tree in the yard, a transparent backdrop. Just as the car door was about to close, I don't know where I found the strength, but I rushed over and grabbed Chin Man's pant leg tightly. That was my favorite pant leg, carrying a faint scent of perfume. "Mom," I looked up, tears welling in my eyes. "Take me with you." "Okay, I'll be good from now on. I'll work hard to learn calculus." Chin Man's body stiffened for a moment. She lowered her head, looking at my little hands covered in mud, her brows tightly furrowed. It was a kind of disgust at seeing something filthy. She didn't say a word, simply lifting her foot, trying to shake my hand off. Once, twice I held on tightly, my nails nearly digging into the fabric of her clothes. "Sunyan," Su Shizhe's icy voice came from the car. "Let go. What do you think you're doing? Don't hold us back from starting our new life." The words "new life" pierced my ears like 3 red-hot needles. So A life without me was their so-called new life. Qin Man had finally lost her patience. She lifted her other foot and kicked me square in the chest. The force wasn't strong, but it was enough to make me, a 5-year-old child, lose my balance. I fell backward, the back of my head hitting the bluestone slab with a heavy thud. With a buzzing sound, the world spun around me. I saw the black sedan speeding away, leaving a trail of dust. Without a moment's pause, I saw my grandparents at the gate, tears streaming down their aged faces. Rushing over to embrace me, I saw a rift break through the gloomy clouds in the sky, and a pale beam of light fell upon my face. I did not cry, not a single tear fell. The pain at the back of my skull was piercing, but it couldn't compare to the coldness in my heart. From that moment on, a tender part of me shattered completely, then was sealed away by ice. I told myself, Sun Yan, remember this day, remember their eyes, remember every word they said. Remember the humiliation of being kicked open. One day, I will make them regret it, not by kneeling and begging for my forgiveness, but by making them stand before me, unworthy even of looking up to me. Chapter 2, 10 years passed. In the blink of an eye, I was 15, a freshman at the town's high school, with average grades and plain looks. The kind of ordinary teenager who would disappear into a crowd. I lived with my grandparents, simple farmers who raised me on their meager savings and income from farming the land. At school, I am seen by teachers as a mediocre student with no ambition, and by classmates as a silent, even somewhat aloof weirdo. No one knows that I have another identity. In the dead of night, when my grandparents have fallen asleep, I open the modified old computer under my bed. As the screen lights up, a faint blue glow reflects on my face, and my eyes shift from the gentle and calm demeanor of the day to sharp and cold. Here, I am not Sun Yan, I am S, a code name that exists like a deity in the underground cyber world. I did not study the theoretical mathematics and physics that my parents regarded as the golden rule. I discovered that I have an almost insane talent for another thing, coding and information. After being abandoned at the age of 5, I stumbled upon the only old computer in the village, and from then on, a new world opened up for me. I taught myself every programming language and broke through countless firewalls that were hailed as unbreakable. Logic, data, code, in my eyes, these are 10,000 times more interesting than those cold formulas. They are alive, fluid, the blood that forms the skeleton of modern society, and I am the god who controls it all. For 10 years, I have accomplished countless impossible tasks. Through the internet, I once made all the funds of a transnational fraud syndicate evaporate within an hour, transferring them into the accounts of dozens of charitable organizations. I once anonymously submitted a detailed list of an overseas spy network to the National Security Department. The wealth I have accumulated is already an astronomical figure, quietly lying in anonymous accounts around the world, enough to buy 10 towns like this one, but I have not touched them. I am waiting for an opportunity to make Su Shizhe and Qin Man pay for their arrogance. That opportunity had finally arrived. Through my global information surveillance network, a message popped up: North City National Laboratory, Alios project, on the verge of failure due to core technological bottlenecks and a broken funding chain. Project leaders, Su Shizhe, Qin Man, the Alios project, the Apollo project. I remember that name 10 years ago. When they left, they excitedly discussed this grand vision, a plan aimed at harnessing a new form of energy to completely transform the world's energy landscape. This is the culmination of their life's work, the peak of their glory, and the root of their arrogance. I infiltrated the lab's internal network as easily as walking into my own backyard. Countless encrypted files were as good as non-existent before me. I saw their research reports, witnessed all the mental journeys of Su Shizhe and Qin Man over the past decade. They are indeed geniuses, and the conception of their plan is breathtakingly brilliant. But precisely because they are pure theoretical geniuses, they have fatal shortcomings in certain fields of application and engineering. This has caused the project to burn through countless funds, yet it remains stuck at the final step, unable to make a breakthrough. More importantly, the largest investor has decided to withdraw funding due to the lack of short-term returns. Time is running out for them. They are frantically searching for new investors, But any capital with a bit of foresight can see the enormous risks of this project. A cold smirk curled at the corner of my mouth. The fish has taken the bait. I didn't contact them directly, that would be letting them off too easily. I want them to see a glimmer of light from the depths of despair, and then, with my own hands, I will snuff out that glimmer using the identity S. I registered a shell investment company named Apocalypse. Then, I had my AI assistant send letters of intent to nearly 100 top-tier research institutions and high-tech companies worldwide, under the name Apocalypse Capital. Each letter was accompanied by an analysis report of the company's core technology, so precise it was almost terrifying, along with a substantial prepaid investment sum. Overnight, Apocalypse Capital and its mysterious founder S shook the entire tech and finance circles. Everyone knows that a giant crocodile with far-reaching influence, boundless wealth, and terrifying insight has appeared. Everyone wants to know who S really is. Everything I did was to make them hear my name, hearing the only voice of the God that could save them. Then, like the most devout believers, crawling step by step to my feet. Chapter 3, North City, National Joint Laboratory. The atmosphere in the top-floor meeting room was so oppressive it felt like it could be wrung dry. Su Shizhe stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, his back looking desolate, his once impeccably tailored suit now appearing slightly loose. Over the past 10 years, the gray in his hair had grown considerably. Qin Man sat by the conference table, the coffee in front of her already cold. Her face was etched with anxiety, the once brilliant glow unique to a genius now obscured by thick clouds of worry. Shizhe, the last investor has also turned us down. They said our theoretical model is too ahead of its time and the risk of commercial conversion is too high. Su Shizhe turned around and slammed his fist against the glass, producing a dull thud. A bunch of fools, short-sighted fools. They have no idea how great Helios is. This is technology that can change the course of human civilization. His voice was filled with reluctance and anger. Dad, Mom, don't be angry. A clear, crisp voice rang out. Su Yu, 14 years old, walked in. She has grown into a graceful young woman, dressed in a designer dress, with a cool and aloof demeanor, and a pride on her face that belies her age. As a prodigy hailed by the media as once in a century, she is already one of the core members of this project. I've already sent our latest data model to over a dozen top-tier venture capital firms on Wall Street. As long as they understand it, funding won't be an issue, Su Yu said confidently. Just then, Su Shizhe's chief assistant, a middle-aged man with gold-rimmed glasses, rushed in hurriedly. Professor Su, Dr. Qin, something huge has happened. His voice was trembling, his face a complex mix of shock and ecstasy. What is it? All this fuss? Su Shizhe scolded in displeasure. The assistant handed him a tablet, fingers trembling with excitement. Apocalypse Capital, it's the mysterious Apocalypse Capital. They sent us an email. Apocalypse Capital. Su Shizhe and Qin Man exchanged a glance, both seeing the shock in each other's eyes. That name had been thundering in their ears lately, a mysterious giant that rose overnight, sweeping through the global tech scene with thunderous force. Legend has it that its founder, S, possesses the Midas touch. Every project he sets his sights on becomes a future tech titan. Su Shizhe snatched the tablet away. The email was very short, with no unnecessary pleasantries. But the attachment to the email was a 30-page analysis report. He opened the report and only read the first page before his pupils suddenly contracted. Qin Man also leaned in, and her breathing instantly became rapid. This report does not discuss any commercial prospects but directly analyzes the core technical challenge of the Helios project, the stability issue of the high-dimensional energy confinement field. This is precisely the bottleneck that their team spent 3 years and burned through billions of dollars without being able to solve. The wording of the report is precise and incisive. Every word cuts like a scalpel, exposing the most vulnerable points in their theoretical model. Even more terrifying, the report not only identifies the problem but also proposes an astonishingly unconventional solution. A method of hedging and stabilization using quantum foam that they had never conceived of. This is impossible, Su Shizhe murmured to himself, his face turning from pale to red. a mix of extreme shock and excitement. This line of thinking, it's sheer genius. How did he come up with it? Qin Man's body trembled slightly as she pointed to an algorithm model in the report, her voice hoarse. Shuzhe, look here, his understanding of string theory is even beyond ours. The entire conference room fell into a deathly silence. Only their heavy breathing could be heard. They are geniuses, standing at the top of the pyramid. They have spent their entire lives looking down upon the masses. This is the first time they have felt a sense of being looked down upon. The person codenamed S held an absolute, overwhelming intellectual advantage over them. What did he say? Qin Man asked her assistant in a trembling voice. The assistant swallowed hard and said with difficulty, "The email said that Mr. S is very interested in the Alios project, but believes the current team lacks the capability to complete it. This report is just a small reminder. He wants to invest in us. He really wants to invest in us." Su Shuzhe's eyes blazed with fervent light. "Yes. But he made a request." The assistant paused. "He wants to test our team's capabilities before the formal negotiations." "Test us?" Su Yu, who had been silent all along, suddenly let out a cold laugh. Her pride would not allow her to accept that her parents and she were being so belittled. Who does he think he is? A speculator hiding behind a screen, and he dares to test us? Does he even know what real science is? Her face was full of contempt. "Dad, Mom, don't let him fool you. For all we know, he paid some team to write that report. I'll reply to his email right now with a real question and expose him for what he really is." Su Shistrong's he is strong, and Qin Man hesitated. They, too, were angered by S' arrogance. But the fear of that report kept them from acting rashly. However, seeing their proud daughter brimming with confidence, they ultimately acquiesced. A genius is not to be challenged. Su Yu immediately sat down in front of the computer, her slender fingers flying across the keyboard. She wrote into the email a non-linear space-time paradox model she had been researching, one that even her parents found daunting. This was nearly the highest academic level she could currently achieve at. The end of the email, she wrote in a provocative tone, "Dear Mr. S, if you can provide your insights on this model within 24 hours, we might consider accepting your goodwill. Otherwise, please do not disturb real scientists any further." The email was sent successfully. Su Yu leaned back in her chair, a victorious smile curling at the corner of her lips. "Dad, Mom, just wait and watch the show. I guarantee he won't even understand the questions." Su Shuzhe and Qin Man looked at their daughter, the anxiety in their eyes fading, replaced by relief and pride. This was their daughter, a fearless genius. However, they had no idea, thousands of miles away, in a dim little room, I stared at the email that popped up on the screen, a nearly cruel smile spreading across my face. Non-linear spacetime paradox. Isn't this just an extension of the topic that Su Shuzhe insisted on teaching me on my 5th birthday 10 years ago, but which I couldn't learn? The tool he used to prove I was useless has now become a weapon in the hands of his precious daughter to challenge me. Truly, how amusing. Chapter 4, Su Yu's email, like a pebble thrown into a lake, stirred ripples within the lab's core team. Everyone stopped what they were doing, pretending not to care on the surface, but in reality, they were all secretly waiting for S to respond. This was the public challenge issued by the genius girl Su Yu to the mysterious tycoon S. It was a war of intelligence and dignity in our past, and there was no response. 2 hours passed, and still there was silence. The smile on Su Yu's face grew more confident. She held a cup of coffee, pacing slowly through the lab with the elegance of a white swan. "I told you, he's just a businessman playing tricks. Faced with a real problem, he's too scared to even speak," she said softly to the researcher beside her, her voice low but loud enough for everyone to hear. Su Shuzhe and Qin Man gradually began to feel at ease. Perhaps they had truly been intimidated by SS report. That report might really have been the work of some team behind S, while S himself was just a lucky upstart. Qin Man even began to regret that they should not have placed such high expectations on a businessman. Time passed by minute. When 5 hours had passed since Su Yu sent the email, many people had lost interest and were ready to leave work. The smile on Su Yu's lips had already taken on a hint of undisguised mockery. Just then, ding, Su Yu's Computer let out a crisp email notification sound. The entire lab fell silent in an instant. All eyes turned sharply toward the screen. Suyu was taken aback for a moment, then let out a soft chuckle and calmly sat back down in front of the computer. It seems our Mr. S has finally understood the problem after spending several hours on it. She said this while clicking open the email. The sender of the email was none other than S. The content was only a single line of text: "Your model is fundamentally wrong from the ground up." Suyu's expression changed instantly. "Arrogant," she muttered under her breath, scrolling down with the mouse wheel to see what nonsense S had written as a defense. However, when she saw the attachment in the email, her hand froze. The attachment was a dynamic 3D model simulation process. Opening it, an incredibly complex spacetime structure diagram unfolded, rotated, and evolved on the screen. On the other side of the screen, there was a dense cascade of scrolling code and formulas. Like a waterfall, S did not attempt to resolve the paradox proposed by Suyu. He did something even more terrifying. Using Suyu's model as a foundation, he conducted a trillion ultra-high-speed simulations. At the 789 billionth simulation, a parameter in the model experienced a collapse so minuscule it was almost negligible, and this collapse triggered a chain reaction, ultimately leading to an irreversible theoretical breakdown of the entire spacetime structure. This meant that the model Suyu had prided herself on, the one she considered a flawless theoretical masterpiece, was, from the very beginning, a beautiful but doomed castle in the air, destined for self-destruction. Its foundation was wrong. "No, it can't be." Suyu's lips lost their color. She murmured to herself, her fingers frantically tapping on the keyboard, trying to find a flaw in the derivation process of S. But the more she looked, the colder her heart grew. Every step of SS deduction was flawless, the logic as tight as a chain forged from diamond. He not only pointed out the error but also demonstrated, in a way she couldn't fully grasp yet had to admit was brilliant, how the error had occurred. This is no longer a problem. This is the teacher who set the question. Telling a primary school student that you don't even understand the principle of 1 + 1. This is a dimensionality reduction strike, a purely intellectual, merciless crushing. "Xiaoye, what's wrong?" Qin Man noticed something was off with her daughter and quickly walked over. Su Shizhe and the other researchers also gathered around. When they saw what was on the screen, the entire lab fell into a silence as if death itself had descended. The color drained from everyone's face in an instant. They saw the collapsed parameter, they saw the collapsed spacetime model, and they saw the other document that S had attached at the end of the email. That is a new model, a perfect solution to the nonlinear spacetime paradox that fixes all errors. And at the signature of this new model, a line of small text was written. "I got bored of this subject when I was 5 years old. But Suyu could no longer bear the immense humiliation and blow. A sweet taste rose in her throat, and a mouthful of blood sprayed onto the pure white keyboard. Her body swayed and then fell backward. "Xiaoyu!" Qin Man screamed as she caught her. Su Shizhe stood frozen in place, his body trembling like a sieve. He stared fixedly at the line of text on the screen. "By the time I was 5, I was already bored with it." A long-buried image, deliberately forgotten for 10 years, suddenly surged up from the depths of his memory. That rainy day, the frail figure kneeling on the ground, crying and saying, "I can't learn it." It was he who personally wrote the basic model of that nonlinear temporal paradox on the blackboard, using it as a tool to humiliate his own biological son. A coincidence? No, there is no such cruel coincidence in this world. A terrifying thought that made his soul tremble uncontrollably surged forth. Could it be? Mr. S has sent another email. The assistant's voice rang out again, this time with a sob in it. Su Shizhe spun around abruptly and snatched the tablet. The new email contained only one sentence: "Tomorrow, at the North City Technology Investment Summit, my representative will be present, if you still want the investment, comma." Chapter 5. Suyu was rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with stress-induced shock caused by acute mental stimulation. The news that a genius girl was refuted to the point of vomiting blood by a mysterious person with just a single email spread like a virus within the lab. The halo that once surrounded her shattered completely overnight. In its place came sympathy, mockery, and Schadenfreude in the meeting room. Su Shizhe and Qin Man sat in silence, the atmosphere as heavy as iron. Qin Man's eyes were red and swollen, her face full of exhaustion and worry. Shizhe, Xiaoye, the doctor said she has suffered severe psychological trauma, and it might cause permanent damage to her self-confidence. Her voice choked with sobs. That S, who exactly is he? Why did he do this to Xiaoye? She's only 14. Su Shizhe did not answer. He sat on the sofa, holding the tablet in his hand, the screen still displaying SS email. The phrase, "I was already bored of it by the time I was 5" echoed in his mind like a curse. He replayed that afternoon 10 years ago over and over again. Was that child really unable to learn, or was he, from the very beginning, engaging in a silent rebellion in a way he himself could not understand? No, impossible. Su Shizhe shook his head violently, casting aside this absurd thought. He would rather believe that S was an ancient monster who had lived for centuries than believe that the son he had deemed a failure could be such a terrifying existence that would completely destroy the pride and understanding he has built over a lifetime. He's not targeting Xiaoye. Su Shizhe's voice was hoarse and dry. He's targeting us. He's humiliating us. He stood up and paced restlessly around the room. First, he critiques our core technology, then he crushes Xiaoye's confidence. Every step he takes lands on our most vulnerable spot. He's like a hunter toying with prey that has fallen into a trap. Qin Man's body trembled slightly. Then, are we still going to that summit tomorrow? Yes, we must go. A flicker of ruthlessness flashed in Su Shizhe's eyes. I want to see for myself just what kind of demon this S really is. He's pushed us to this point. Isn't it all for money? As long as he's willing to invest, we'll endure any humiliation. As long as Alios succeeds, we can take back everything we've lost today, and more. His tone sounded less like he was convincing Qin Man and more like he was convincing himself. However, despite the tough talk, their hearts were filled with panic. The capital chain had completely broken. If no new investment came in, by next month, they wouldn't even be able to pay the salaries of their lab staff. The Alios project, the dream they had poured 10 years of effort into, would become a joke. They had no way out. S was their only and final lifeline. The next day, at the North City International Convention and Exhibition Center, the Technology Investment Summit was a gathering of luminaries, bringing together the most elite capital and cutting-edge tech projects from home and abroad. Su Shizhe and Qin Man mustered their spirits, donned their finest attire, and attended as project leaders. But as soon as they appeared, they felt the strange gazes around them. The story of how the prodigy Su Yu was persuaded by a mysterious person named S with just one email had somehow spread within a small circle in the industry. The investors who had once treated them with utmost respect now looked at them with amusement and distance in their eyes. Su Shizhe and Qin Man could only force awkward smiles, found a corner to sit down, and felt as if they were sitting on pins and needles. They were like two defeated roosters, stripped of all their pride and dignity. Now, their only hope was the soon-to-appear representative of S. The summit began. One project after another took the stage for roadshows. One investor after another stepped up to give speeches. Su Shizhe and Qin Man were completely unable to listen. Their eyes were fixed on the entrance, scanning every person who entered like radar. They tried to pick out from the crowd the one who might represent S. A figure with a commanding presence and sharp eyes. Just then, a young man in a waiter's uniform walked past them, carrying a tray of champagne. The young man looked about 15 or 16, with a slender build and delicate features, but there was a hint of calmness in his brow that belied his age. He walked steadily, but for some reason, his foot suddenly slipped, the tray tilted, and a glass of champagne splashed directly onto Qin Man's white dress. Ah! Qin Man let out a low cry and quickly stood up, but it was too late. The pale yellow liquid left a large, glaring stain on her expensive gown. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. The young man hurriedly set down the tray and clumsily pulled out tissues, trying to help her wipe it off, his face full of panic and apology. What's wrong with you, kid? Don't you watch where you're going? Su Shizhe's anger flared up instantly, all the pent-up frustration and humiliation finding an outlet at that moment. He pointed at the young man's nose and shouted, "Do you know how much this Dress costs. Even selling you wouldn't cover it. Get lost. Chin Man also frowned in disgust and pushed away the young man's hand. Enough. Don't touch me. Go get your manager here right now. Her gaze was like that of someone looking at a bug that had accidentally crawled onto her. The young man lowered his head after being scolded, his shoulders trembling slightly, looking utterly pitiful. I didn't mean to, he apologized in a low voice, then, as if frightened, turned and ran away. Su Shizhe watched his flustered retreating figure, and only then did his anger subside a little. Chin Man, on the other hand, looked at her dress with a pained expression and muttered under her breath, "What terrible luck." None of them noticed that the boy who turned and ran away, in a corner unseen by anyone, had a cold, utterly humorless curve tugging at the corner of his lowered mouth. I adjusted the waiter's bow tie, and the mirror reflected a strange, ordinary face. This is me, Sun Yan. I easily infiltrated this summit under the guise of a student volunteer. That move just now was, of course, intentional. I just wanted to get a closer look, after 10 years, to see if they were still the same as before, the same arrogance, the same disdain for others. The answer left me quite satisfied. All right. The appetizer is over now, it's time for the main course. Chapter 6. Chin Man had to go to the backstage lounge to deal with her expensive gown. Su Shizhe sat alone in his seat, his face dark and terrifying. The whispers around him buzzed into his ears like flies. Did you hear? Professor Su's daughter, that genius girl, was called out in an email. That's the mysterious S. Right, so terrifying. Who on earth is this person? The Alios project was already hanging by a thread, and now its reputation is ruined. I think it's completely dead in the water. Every word was like a needle, piercing his pride. He clenched his fists tightly, his nails digging into his flesh, yet he felt no pain. He could only hope that the representative from S would show up soon, armed with a massive investment contract to shut everyone up. Just as he was about to be driven mad by these rumors, I appeared before him again, carrying a new tray. This time, there was only a glass of warm water on the tray. I walked up to him, bowed slightly, and handed the glass to him. Sir, have some water. My voice was soft, carrying the unique clarity of youth. Su Shizhe was restless and irritable, not even glancing at me as he waved his hand impatiently. Take it away. Didn't I tell you to get lost? Why are you back again? He thought I was still the same waiter from before. I didn't move, still maintaining my bent posture. You seem troubled, I said. Is it because of the Alios project? Su Shizhe's body jolted violently. He suddenly looked up, his sharp gaze piercing toward me like a knife. When he saw my face clearly, he froze. This face vaguely held a few familiar contours, yet had become unfamiliar due to the passage of 10 years. You, his brows furrowed tightly. Who are you? Do we know each other? I straightened up, a hint of a perfectly measured smile appearing on my face, tinged with a touch of timidity and ingratiation. Don't you remember me? I'm Sun Yan. I deliberately made my voice sound humble, like someone who has struggled at the bottom for years and, upon unexpectedly encountering a once lofty relative, is caught in that complex state of longing to be recognized yet fearing rejection. Sun Yan. Su Shizhe repeated the name, his eyes shifting first from confusion to shock, and finally to a deep disdain and impatience. He remembered the son he had abandoned in his hometown, the one who had turned out to be a failure. How did you end up here? His voice instantly turned cold, filled with wariness and disgust. Who told you to come? Working as a waiter here? You're really bringing shame to me. He instinctively lowered his voice and glanced around, afraid that someone might overhear our conversation and discover that he had any connection with such a lowly waiter. I lowered my head, nervously twisting the hem of my clothes with both hands, perfectly playing the role of an insecure and cowardly person. I got into a vocational high school in Beicheng, and the school organized us to volunteer here. I never expected to run into you here. As I spoke, I secretly glanced up at him, my eyes filled with admiration, like an abandoned puppy seeing its former owner. That look sent a chill down Su Shizhe's spine. What he could not stand the most was the entanglement and dependence of such an incompetent person. Enough. He cut me off coldly. I don't want to hear about your affairs. We no longer have any connection. Leave here immediately. And don't let anyone know you know me. Do you understand? He pulled a stack of cash from his wallet, probably 2,000 to 3,000, and shoved it into my hand, his gesture like that of brushing off a beggar. Take this money and get far away. Don't ever show up in front of me again. I looked at the money in my hand, the red banknotes so glaring I lifted my head, and a layer of mist welled up in my eyes at just the right moment. Dad, I called out this word I hadn't spoken in 10 years, my voice choked with tears. I just wanted to see you and Mom. I didn't mean anything else. Shut up. Su Shizhe shot up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Who's your father? I don't have a son as worthless as you. His voice suddenly rose, drawing a few surprised glances from those around. He immediately realized his loss of composure and forcibly lowered his voice again, leaning close to my ear, warning me word by word in a tone only the two of us could hear. Sunyan, I'm warning you. Today is extremely important to me. If you dare spout nonsense here and ruin my plans, I guarantee you won't even be able to finish vocational high school. With that, he stopped looking at me, adjusted his tie, and turned to leave, as if spending even one more second with me would taint him with something filthy. I stood there, watching his resolute back, the money in my hand crumpled and deformed from my grip. The sadness and cowardice on my face receded like a tide. What took their place was a chilling coldness. Almost pleasurable, very good, extremely good. With his own hands, he pulled back the curtain on the most perfect prelude to his impending social execution. Chapter 7. Halfway through the summit, the host announced in an excited and mysterious tone. Next, let us welcome a special guest with the warmest applause. She represents the recently shocking global tech community, Revelation Capital, and the mysterious Mr. S. As the words fell, the entire venue erupted, all cameras and eyes instantly focused on the entrance of the main stage. Su Shizhe suddenly straightened up, staring intently in that direction, his heart pounding uncontrollably. The main event was finally about to begin. Under the gaze of the crowd, a woman in a silver gray, custom-tailored suit slowly walked onto the stage. She appeared to be around 30 years old, with delicate features, a capable and elegant demeanor, and a composed stride, exuding the commanding presence of someone long accustomed to power. She was not any of the big shots in the industry that Su Shizhe had imagined. This was a completely unfamiliar face. Hello everyone, I am Lin Shi, the CEO of Apocalypse Capital. The woman picked up the microphone, her voice cool and pleasant, echoing throughout the venue through the speakers. Her gaze swept across the audience, a look of scrutiny carrying a faint sense of pressure. When her gaze casually brushed across Su Shizhe's face, he even felt his breath stop for a second. Today, I come on behalf of Mr. S. Lin, she said bluntly, without any unnecessary words. Mr. S believes that 99% of the world's current technology investments are a waste of resources. The true future does not belong to speculators chasing trends, but to dreamers who can create them. The audience erupted in murmurs. What bold words, but no one dared to refute, because the person who said this was a representative of S. Lin. She ignored the commotion below the stage and continued. For example, the recently controversial Alios project. She directly called out Su Shizhe's name. Su Shizhe's body stiffened, feeling all the eyes in the room focus on him. Some sympathetic, some curious, but mostly gloating, as if they were waiting to see a good show. Many people think this is a project destined to fail. It burns money, carries high risks, and shows no commercial returns in the short term. Lin Shi's tone was calm, as if stating a fact. Su Shizhe's face grew increasingly grim, and his fists clenched again. However, Lin Shi shifted the topic. But in Mr. S.'s view, the Alios project is the closest concept to God in this era. Its theoretical foundation is the key to ushering in the fourth industrial revolution. She paused, her gaze precisely landing on Su Shizhe, a meaningful smile curling at the corner of her lips. Its leaders, Professor Su Shizhe and Dr. Qin Man, are undoubtedly the most brilliant geniuses of this era. Su Shizhe was stunned. The people around were also stunned. Was this a compliment to them? The mood, which had just plummeted to rock bottom, suddenly felt like riding a roller coaster, yanked back up into the clouds. The stark contrast left him momentarily dizzy. The onlooking gazes of those around, which had been waiting for a spectacle, turned into shock and envy. But, Lin, she spoke again, and these two words were like a bucket of cold water, extinguishing the flame of hope that had just ignited in Su Shuja's heart. A great vision, paired with a less-than-perfect execution team, often leads to disaster. Her voice was not loud, yet every word struck like a dagger. As far as we know, the Helios project has been stalled for 3 months due to dual bottlenecks in funding and technology. What's even more ridiculous is that a core member of the project team was provoked into vomiting blood on the spot by a basic theoretical model problem. Boom! The venue completely erupted. If before it was just a rumor, now it was a public execution by SS CEO in front of the whole world. Su Shuja's face instantly turned the color of pig liver. He felt his dignity being repeatedly scorched over a fire. He wanted to retort, to roar, but looking at the imposing woman on the stage, he couldn't utter a single word. Lin, she seemed not to notice his embarrassment, continuing to pronounce his fate in that cold, clear voice. Therefore, Mr. S has decided that Revelation Capital will inject 10 billion into the Helios project. 10 billion. This number exploded like a nuclear bomb in the venue. Everyone went crazy. Su Shuja's mind went blank, with only those 3 words buzzing in his ears. The extreme reversal of despair and hope nearly made him faint on the spot. But, Lin, she's third but came. We have one condition. After saying this, she didn't continue. Instead, she put down the microphone and gave a slight nod to the audience below. Then, under the puzzled gaze of everyone, she stepped off the stage without stating what the conditions were. She just left like that. She walked straight toward a certain corner of the venue. Su Shuja thought she was coming to him, and stood up excitedly, wanting to greet her. However, Lin, she didn't even glance at him and walked right past him. She walked to that corner and stopped in front of the waiter boy who had just been insulted by Su Shuja. In the deathly silence of the entire venue, this ice-cold female CEO, worth hundreds of billions and exuding an overwhelming presence, bowed respectfully at a 90-degree angle to the boy in the cheap uniform. Mr. S, you've worked hard. Chapter 8. Time seemed to have been paused at this very moment. In the entire exhibition center, spanning thousands of square meters, you could hear a pin drop. Everyone's mind had gone blank. Their eyes were wide as brass bells, their mouths agape as if they could swallow an egg. Staring fixedly at that corner, the young man in the waiter's uniform, the young man who was told to get lost by Su Shuja, pointing at his nose. The young man who was pushed away with a look of disgust by Qin Man, the so-called worthless son that Su Shuja dismissed with just a few $1,000s. Could it be S, the mysterious S who stirred up global turmoil and struck fear into the hearts of countless tycoons? This thought, like a bolt of black lightning, split open the minds of everyone present. Absurd, outrageous, incomprehensible. Yet the scene unfolding before his eyes was so real. The CEO of Apocalypse Capital, that lofty Ice Queen Lin Shi, was bowing to that young man in a posture almost bordering on humility. Su Shuja's expression froze, the color drained from his face in an instant, leaving it even paler than the marble floor tiles beneath his feet. His body began to tremble uncontrollably, not from anger, but from an extreme fear seeping out from the very marrow of his bones. He remembered in SS email, the line, "I was already bored of it by the time I was 5 years old." He remembered when Sunyan had just looked at him. Deep within those seemingly timid eyes, there was a trace of cold mockery he hadn't understood. He remembered how he had just used the most caustic words to humiliate him. "You've brought shame to my face. I don't have a son as worthless as you. Take this money and get out of my sight." Every word was like a red-hot branding iron, searing deeply into his soul. His mind was roaring, and the world began to spin before his eyes. "No, no, this can't be. This absolutely can't be," he muttered to himself, staggering backward, and collapsed onto a chair. Qin Man, hearing the commotion outside, hurried out from the backstage. When she saw Lin Shi bowing to me, she was struck as if by lightning. Just like Su Shuja, frozen in place, she covered her mouth to keep herself from screaming. The child she had kicked away, the waiter she had scorned for dirtying her gown. Could it be that their last lifeline was the god who could control their fate? Sunyan, slowly straightened up. I didn't look at Lin Shi, nor did I glance at the stunned faces around me. My gaze, cutting through the crowd, landed precisely on the faces of Su Shizhe and Qin Man. I watched them go from shock, to disbelief, to fear, and finally to despair. I savored the vivid expressions on their faces, as if I were watching a meticulously choreographed play. Then, slowly, I pulled out from my pocket the stack of money that Su Shizhe had just stuffed into my hands. I held it between two fingers, my movements casual and dismissive, as if it weren't money, but some filthy piece of trash. I turned toward Su Shizhe and gave a slight toss. Red banknotes, like a flock of blood-stained butterflies, fluttered through the air, then drifted down, scattering at the feet of Su Shizhe and Qin Man. A 10 billion investment. I've made it. My voice was not loud, but through the tiny microphone Lin Shi had quietly handed me, it clearly spread throughout the entire venue. This is Mr. S, your first condition. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the final verdict. I looked at Su Shizhe's pale face, the curve of my lips growing wider, but my voice growing colder. The second condition. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, come to the old house where you abandoned me and kneel down. Tell me you were wrong. After saying that, I didn't spare them another glance. I nodded at Lin Shi. It's too noisy here. Let's go. Yes, Mr. S, surrounded by dozens of black-suited bodyguards, under the awe, fear, and disbelief of thousands of people in the venue. I, Sun Yan, this 15-year-old waiter, walked past the two completely broken geniuses with my head held high and a calm demeanor. Just like 10 years ago, they walked past me with ease, only this time our positions were completely reversed. Chapter 9. The next morning, a light drizzle began to fall over the small town. The air was damp and chilly. Just like that morning 10 years ago, the old house, abandoned for 10 years, stood silently in the rain, moss creeping over the corners of the walls, making it look even more dilapidated. I sat under the old locust tree in the yard, holding a cup of hot tea in my hands. The tea was brewed by Grandpa, using wild tea leaves picked from the mountains. It had a slight bitterness, but a lingering sweetness. Grandpa and Grandma had already been respectfully escorted by the people sent by Lin Shi to the best nursing home in Beicheng. As they left, they kept looking back every few steps, their cloudy eyes filled with worry and confusion. They couldn't understand why, overnight, their ordinary grandson had become someone so important that even the big shots on TV had to bow to him. I didn't explain. Some things don't need an explanation. 9:50 in the morning, a black Mercedes stopped at the entrance of the alley. The car door opened, and Su Shizhe and Qin Man stepped out of the vehicle. They didn't use an umbrella, letting the cold rain soak their expensive clothes and meticulously styled hair. Overnight, they seemed to have aged 10 years. Su Shizhe's back hunched over, and fine wrinkles crept up around Qin Man's eyes. On their faces, there was no longer the pride and brilliance that belonged to geniuses, only ashen despair and numbness. Behind them, Su Yu followed. She was wearing a hospital gown, her face as pale as a sheet of paper, her eyes hollow, like a doll whose soul had been drained away. She had been forcibly dragged out of the hospital. Step by step, they trudged along the muddy dirt path until they reached the courtyard gate of the old house. That worn wooden door was left slightly ajar. They pushed the door open and saw me sitting under the locust tree. My gaze fell upon them calmly. No hatred, no satisfaction, not even a single ripple. It was like watching three strangers who had nothing to do with me. This extreme indifference, more than any venomous words, was like a knife, slowly slicing their hearts. We have come. Su Shizhe's voice was hoarse, as if it had been scraped by sandpaper. He looked at me, his lips trembling, wanting to say something, but unable to utter a single word. I ignored him, just lowered my head and blew on the tea leaves floating in the cup. The time hasn't come yet, I said calmly. The three of them stood rigidly in the center of the courtyard, like three statues, letting the rain wash over them. Time passed, minute by minute. Each second, for them, felt as long as a century. This is torment, a trial. 10 o'clock sharp. The old-fashioned wall clock let out a single dong. I looked up and set down my teacup. The time has come. Thud. Su Shizhe could no longer hold himself up. His knees gave way, and he fell heavily into the muddy water. The splashing mud stained the clean hem of my trousers. Qin Man also knelt down, her body trembling violently. Finally, she buried her head deeply, pressing it against the cold floor, letting out a suppressed sob like the mournful cry of a beast. Only Suyu remained standing. In her hollow eyes, a flicker of mad flame suddenly ignited. She pointed at me and shrieked, "I won't kneel, you liar, you thief, what gives you the right? Everything you have is stolen. Your intelligence was inherited from Mom and Dad. What right do you have to judge us here?" Her voice, harsh and piercing, I looked at her and finally let out a faint smile. I stood up and walked over to her. "Do you really think I'm playing this game with you using my intelligence?" I shook my head, a hint of pity in my smile. "Let me show you what a true dimensional reduction strike looks like." I took out my phone, opened a video, and handed it to her. In the video, it is the complete data model of the Alios project. A red progress bar is loading rapidly. That is the supercomputer of Apocalypse Capital, which is conducting the final simulation and refinement of their project. Countless problems they could not solve are being effortlessly tackled one by one on the screen. Countless algorithms beyond their imagination were written perfectly, line by line. That was not human wisdom. It was the power of gods. It was absolute, unreasonable violence, built with money and computing power. See, I leaned close to her ear and whispered in a demonic voice, "I don't need to understand your damn theories at all. I just need to use money to buy the strongest team in the world. To buy the fastest computer in the world. I can accomplish in 1 hour what you couldn't do in 10 years. The intelligence you pride yourselves on is worthless in front of me. I'm not competing with you to see who's smarter. I'm simply using money to shatter your dignity." Suyu's pupils completely lost focus at that moment. She watched the rapidly advancing progress bar in the video, listening to my cruel words. Her last shred of pride, her final spiritual pillar, was utterly destroyed. "Ah!" She let out an inhuman scream, turned around, and ran wildly toward the outside. In the courtyard, only Su Shizhe and Qin Man remained, kneeling on the ground. Su Shizhe lifted his head. His face, once so imposing, was now covered in tears and mud. "Sunyan, no, Mr. S, we were wrong. We were truly wrong." As he spoke, he fiercely slapped his own face with his hand. "We shouldn't have abandoned you. We are beasts. We were blind." Qin Man was already sobbing uncontrollably, only able to kowtow. On the ground repeatedly, thump, thump, blood soon oozed from the forehead. I watched them quietly, watched them tear apart all their dignity before me. I had waited 10 years for this day, but when this moment actually came, there was no ecstasy in my heart as I had imagined, only an empty calm. "Wrong," I softly repeated. "You're not wrong, you just made the wrong choice. In this world, choice matters more than talent, and the price of making the wrong choice, you've only just begun to taste it." Chapter 10. The rain gradually stopped. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the clouds, shining onto the wet courtyard and casting a faint rainbow. Su Shizhe and Qin Man were still kneeling on the ground, like two stray dogs whose spines had been pulled out. Their confessions, their tears, their self-inflicted slaps, in my eyes. They are all cheap and laughable. If it were me kneeling here today, would they show even a shred of mercy? The answer is self-evident. I pulled a document from my pocket and tossed it in front of them. That is an equity transfer agreement and a statement of change in project leadership. Sign it. My voice carried no trace of emotion. Su Shizhe's trembling hand picked up the document soaked in mud and water. When he saw the contents clearly, his body trembled violently once again. The agreement required them to unconditionally transfer all ownership of the Alios project to Apocalypse Capital. Furthermore, they were to hold a global press conference and publicly declare that the true visionary and chief architect of the project was Sunyan, also known as Mr. S. From then on, the two of them, along with their daughter Suyu, would merely be ordinary researchers on the project, with no decision-making authority whatsoever. This is more painful than killing them. Alios was the life's work and glory of their entire existence. Now, I will not only take it away from them, but also force them to admit with their own mouths that they are merely employees. While the true God is the son they once discarded like a worn-out shoe, what I want is not their lives, it is their very souls. I will erase their names from the history of science and replace them with mine. You, Qin Man lifted her head, her face a mix of blood and mud, filled with disbelief. You can't do this. This is our life's work, your life's work. I laughed. Without my 10 billion, it would be nothing but a pile of scrap paper right now. Without my technology, it will forever remain nothing more than an unattainable theory. The moment you decided to abandon me, you forfeited any right to possess it. I looked down at them from above, my gaze as cold as a blade. Now, you have two choices. 1. Sign it. You can remain in this project as ordinary researchers, watching it flourish under my guidance. You will witness the birth of an era firsthand, but that glory has nothing to do with you. 2. Don't sign. Apocalypse Capital will immediately form a new team, bypass you, and replicate this project from scratch. With my financial resources and technical capabilities, it will take at most half a year, and you will be completely kicked out, branded as failures and academic frauds, forever blacklisted by this industry. I tossed a pen onto the table in front of them. Choose to keep the last shred of involvement, barely clinging on, or choose to let your pitiful pride be buried together in the dust of history. Su Shizhe and Qin Man stared blankly at the agreement, then at my expressionless face. In their eyes flickered struggle, humiliation, and reluctance, but in the end, it all turned into a dead silence of despair. They knew they had no choice. From the moment I revealed my identity, they had already lost completely and utterly. Su Shizhe's hands trembled like leaves in the autumn wind. He struggled for a long time, and in the end, he still picked up that pen. The tip of the pen traced an incredibly difficult mark across the paper. When he signed the final stroke of his name, it was as if all his strength had been drained from him, and he collapsed into the muddy water. Qin Man closed her eyes, and 2 lines of clear tears slid down. She also picked up the pen and signed her own name. I took back the agreement without even glancing at them, turned around, and walked out of the courtyard. Lin Shi and a team of bodyguards, holding black umbrellas, were already waiting for me at the entrance. Mr. S., everything has been taken care of. I nodded and got into the extended Rolls-Royce. The window slowly rose, sealing off everything outside from the rearview mirror. I took one last look at that courtyard. Su Shizhe and Qin Man were still kneeling there, like 2 symbols abandoned by the times. The place that once held all the nightmares of my childhood now, in my eyes, seemed as small as a toy. To the sanatorium, I said to the driver. Yes, Mr. S. The car started smoothly, heading in a direction completely opposite to the past. From today onward, Su Shizhe and Qin Man are nothing more than 2 insignificant names in my vast business empire, and I, Su Nian, will stand at the top of this world, bathed in the radiance of Alios. As for forgiveness, I have no need to forgive them. I only need them to live forever in the shadow of looking up to me, dwelling in endless regret. This is the best revenge against them, and it is also the finest coming-of-age gift I give to myself. Next, let's listen to the next story. The day before the college entrance exam, the class beauty stood up in the classroom and raised her arm high, shouting, "Exam-oriented education is a prison. We have to hand in blank papers, use our actions to change this twisted system, shock the whole nation." Her eyes brimmed with tears, her voice trembling, stirring the entire class into a fervor. The class monitor was the first to raise his hand in response, followed closely by the study committee member. Over 40 people in the class nodded in unison. I sat in the corner, watching this farce coldly. On the day of the exam, I gripped my pen and fought through 2.5 days, handing in the answers that represented 12 years of hard study. When the results came out, the class beauty stood at the school gate, breaking down in tears. She was the only one in the entire class who had handed in a blank paper. The day before the college entrance exam, I returned to Class 7, Grade 3, at No. 3 High School. On the upper right corner of the blackboard was written, "Countdown 1." The chalk characters were covered in a layer of dust blown out by the fan. The classroom was very quiet. Too quiet for the day before the college entrance exam. I gripped the edge of the desk, my fingertips cold. In my past life, it was also this time, also this classroom. Shun Qingyang stood at the podium, her eyes red, her voice trembling. She said exam-oriented education was a prison. She said we could no longer be slaves to scores. She said the nation needed someone to step up. She said our batch should become the spark. That day, over 40 people in the class were swept up by her passionate words. They raised their hands, they pounded the desks, they wrote the 3 words hand in blank papers on their scratch paper. Only I didn't raise my hand, and only Shun Qingyang didn't hand in a blank paper. Later, when the scores came out, she became the city's top scorer. She stood in front of the camera in a white dress, saying she had never encouraged anyone to give up the exam. She said her classmates were under too much pressure and made irrational choices. She said she was very sorry. Those who handed in blank papers were beaten by their families, scolded by relatives, and ridiculed by the school. Some retook the exam for 3 years and still hadn't recovered. Some went straight to work. Some sent me messages at night, saying they wished they hadn't believed Shun Qingyang back then. I had gotten into a university in another province back then, so I wasn't dragged into it, but I remembered their faces. I also remembered the smile Shun Qingyang couldn't quite suppress at the corner of her mouth when she accepted the award. Now, she was standing at the podium again. Her school uniform was washed white, her hair tied in a low ponytail, tears already welling up in her eyes. She was born to cry. Once she cried, everyone thought she was innocent, wronged, and right. Classmates, she supported herself on the podium with both hands, her voice very soft. Tomorrow is the college entrance exam. No one spoke. He Chuan sat in the first row, the pen in his hand snapping its cap as he squeezed it. Meng Zai lowered her head, her nails scraping against the edge of the desk bit by bit. In the back rows, a few boys who were usually the rowdiest didn't respond either. Shun Qingyang paused. She probably thought everyone was too nervous, so she raised her voice. Are you really willing to accept this? 12 years, and everyone only looks at scores. We are clearly living people. Yet we're being decided by a single piece of paper for our entire lives. As she spoke, tears rolled down. In the past, it was this single tear that ignited the whole class. I sat in the last row, watching her. Her gaze swept over everyone, finally landing on my face. She quickly looked away. In my past life, I hadn't cooperated with her. Later, in the class group, she said I was too selfish, only thinking about saving myself, but she didn't know that I had never believed her from the start. Shun Qingyang sniffled. If we all hand in blank papers together, the whole nation will see us, they will discuss it, they will reflect, they will know what this system has turned students into. Still, silence under the podium. The fan turned slowly. Exam paper bags were stacked by the teacher's desk, the seals neat and tidy. A flicker of stiffness passed through Shun Qingyang's eyes. She hadn't expected no one to respond. In my past life, the first to stand up was He Chuan. He said, I support you. The second was Meng Zai. She said, we can't stay silent anymore. Then the whole class surged forward. This time, He Chuan looked down at the broken pen cap, not moving for a long time. Shun Qingyang bit her lip. Class monitor. She called out his name. What do you think? The whole class's gaze fell on He Chuan. He Chuan slowly lifted his head. His eyes were very red, not red from being moved by her, more like the redness of having stayed up for a long time. He looked at Shun Qingyang and suddenly smiled. I think you're right. Shun Qingyang breathed a sigh of relief. Tears still hung on her face, but the corner of her mouth was already lifting. He Chuan stood up. Exam-oriented education really does need someone to resist it. He said each word deliberately. Since you're the initiator, we'll all follow your lead. Some people in the classroom nodded along. Meng Zai also lifted her head. That's right, Qingyang. Just tell us what to do, and we'll cooperate. Yaro Shu in the back row slapped the table. Hand in blank papers. Right, this is big enough. Do it thoroughly. Shun Qingyang's eyes lit up. She had finally found that feeling of being supported from her past life. She raised her hand to wipe her tears, her voice even softer. It's not for myself, it's for everyone. I looked at her, picked up my pen, and wrote 2 words on the scratch paper. Begin. The next second, He Chuan pulled a blank A4 sheet from his backpack and slid it onto the podium. Speaking isn't enough, Qingyang. If we're going to change the system, we need to write it down. Shun Qingyang froze. She stared at the A4 paper, a flicker of panic flashing in her eyes. Quickly, she smiled again. Class monitor, There's no need to be this formal. We're classmates. We trust each other. Chuan didn't sit down. He tossed the broken pen cap into the trash bag. Exactly because we trust each other, we need to write it clearly. Tomorrow, whoever turns in a blank paper, whoever doesn't, everyone will know. When the media comes, it'll prove this is a collective action, not a spur-of-the-moment impulse. His words aligned perfectly with her intentions. Shen Qingyang couldn't object. She had just said she wanted the whole country to see. If she backed down now, it would seem like she was all talk. Meng Ziyi handed her pen over. I'll write it. Her voice was steady. In her past life, she had suffered the most. She could have aimed for a top university after turning in blank papers. Her family sold their small shop to fund her retake the second year. She underperformed the third year. She fell ill and ended up at an ordinary vocational college after that. She never attended another class reunion now. She held the pen, writing slowly. Initiative letter. 4 characters landed on the paper. Shen Qingyan's smile loosened a bit. She thought things were back on the track she wanted. Meng Ziyi continued writing. I, Shen Qingyang, voluntarily initiate the action of turning in blank college entrance exam papers. I pledge that tomorrow, for the 4 subjects, Chinese, Math, Comprehensive, and English, I will submit blank papers. I pledge not to answer questions, not to fill in answer sheets, and not to submit any valid scores in any form. I pledge that if I violate this initiative, I will publicly apologize to the entire class and bear all consequences arising from it. When the last line was written, the classroom grew even quieter. Shen Qingyan's smile couldn't hold. Ziyi, she said softly, isn't this too serious? Meng Ziyi looked up. Too serious? You just said this was an action to change the system. An action naturally needs a leader. Chuan took over. Qingyang, you're the class beauty. Your grades are good, and the teachers and classmates trust you. If you sign, we'll have the confidence. Yaroshu shouted from the back row. Exactly. If you don't sign, what if someone chickens out tomorrow? Wouldn't we be throwing away our futures for nothing? Shen Qingyan's face changed. What do you mean by that? Yaroshu spread his hands. Nothing much. I'm just afraid someone might shout loudly but write faster than anyone during the exam. That sentence was like a needle. Shen Qingyan's tears threatened to spill again. She was best at putting herself in the victim's position in her past life. That's how she was. Whoever questioned her, she cried. Whoever made her take responsibility, she said she was just offering suggestions. But this time, no one comforted her, no one handed her tissues, no one scolded Yaroshu. Even the 2 girls, who usually hovered around her, just lowered their heads to pack their bags. Finally, Shen Qingyang looked at me. Yi Tang, do you think so too? I put the pen cap back on. What I think doesn't matter. If you want everyone to turn in blank papers with you, you sign first. Her face paled. I looked at her. That's fair. You can't just shout slogans from the podium while others stake their futures for your footing. Her fingers clenched the edge of the podium. Why do you have to speak so harshly? I said flatly. Because what you want isn't just a piece of scratch paper. It's 12 years of over 40 people's lives. A soft intake of breath rippled through the classroom. Shen Qingyan's eyes reddened even more. She turned to the whole class. Do you all think I'd cheat you too? No one answered. That silence was more brutal than any rebuttal. Chuan pushed the paper forward. Sign. If you sign, I'll be the first. Meng Ziyi placed the pen beside the paper. I'll be the second. Yaroshu tapped the desk. I'll be the third. Shen Qingyang stood at the podium, as if roasted over a fire. She wanted applause, but now, the applause had become handcuffs. She couldn't step down, and she couldn't step down because her persona wouldn't allow it. She was always gentle, brave, and considerate of everyone. She couldn't admit her fear in front of everyone. After a few seconds, she slowly picked up the pen. When the tip touched the paper, her wrist trembled. Shen Qingyang, 3 characters written. Very lightly. Chuan immediately took the paper. I'll sign. He wrote quickly. Meng Ziyi followed. Yaroshu followed. A single piece of paper passed from the first row to the last. Everyone lowered their heads to sign. Some even pressed their thumbprints. The ink pad was taken out by the class treasurer from the class fund box. Shen Qingyang stared at those red seals, her eyes gradually lighting back up. She thought everyone was truly bound to her. When the paper reached me, I didn't sign under the Initiator column. I wrote my name under witness, Yi Tang. Then, I folded the paper and placed it into a transparent document folder. Shen Qingyang reached out to take it. I didn't give it to her. Keep it with me, she frowned. Why? I looked up at her. You're the initiator. I'm afraid you'll get too excited tomorrow and lose it. Her lips moved, but no words came out. The bell for dismissal rang, yet no one in the entire class moved. He Chuan suddenly pulled his phone out of his pocket. He turned the screen toward Shen Qingyang. The recording interface was still lit. It showed that 26 minutes had already been recorded. Shen Qingyang's face finally froze completely. When the homeroom teacher walked in, the atmosphere in the classroom was already off. He scanned the room. Why aren't you all leaving? You have exams tomorrow. Go to bed early tonight. Shen Qingyang immediately lowered her head. She wiped her tears dry, acting as if nothing had happened. He Chuan put his phone away. Meng Ziyi pressed the copy of the initiative letter into her book. Yes, a copy. The original was in my document folder. There were 3 copies, one in He Chuan's hands, one in Meng Ziyi's hands. One had been photographed by Yaro Shu and sent into a temporary group chat he'd set up. The group name had only 2 words, tomorrow. Shen Qingyang didn't know about this group. She was still immersed in the thrill of having the whole class respond to her. The homeroom teacher stepped up to the podium and began talking about exam precautions, admission ticket, ID card, 2B pencil, black ink pen, don't be late, don't bring prohibited items. These words had been said in the last life too, but in the last life, many people hadn't listened at all. Their minds were full of Shen Qingyang's line, history will remember us. History didn't remember them. The admissions system only remembered zeros. After the teacher finished, he looked at Shen Qingyang. Qingyang, just perform normally tomorrow. Your grades are stable. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Shen Qingyang nodded lightly. Teacher, I know. Her voice was so obedient. If I didn't have the document folder in my hands, anyone would think she was just a well-behaved, good student. The teacher looked at the whole class again. You all too. The college entrance exam isn't the end. But it's important. Don't do anything foolish. When those last 4 words landed, several people lowered their heads. Yaro Shu's shoulders tensed. Meng Ziyi gripped her pen tighter. He Chuan turned his face toward the window. I knew they were remembering the last life. That wasn't being foolish, that was being pushed down. And then someone standing on the shore saying, how come you can't swim? After the teacher left, Shen Qingyang stood up again. She wasn't as excited as before. She reverted to her usual soft demeanor. Everyone, don't be nervous. Tomorrow, we'll do it together. She paused. I'll be the first to hand in a blank paper. As soon as those words left her mouth, He Chuan's phone lit up again. He didn't look up. He just placed the phone screen down on the desk. I saw Shen Qingyang's gaze sweep over. She was probably thinking about the recording from earlier. And her expression wasn't great, but she kept going. As long as we're united, there's nothing to fear. Yaro Shu let out a laugh. Then it's settled. You go first. Shen Qingyang bit her lip. Meng Ziyi asked softly. What if the proctor asks you why you're not writing? Shen Qingyang slipped right into character. I'll say I refuse to be defined by scores. He Chuan asked. What if the news interviews you? I'll say this was the collective choice of our entire class. I spoke up. What if someone asks who proposed it? Shen Qingyang looked at me. A flicker of coldness passed through her eyes. Of course it was me. I won't shirk responsibility. I nodded. Good. I put the document folder into the very bottom of my backpack. I zipped it shut. The sound was very soft. Shen Qingyang stared at my backpack. She held back for a moment, then walked over. Yi Tang. Can you let me keep that paper for now? I looked up. No, why? Because you already asked that once. The smile on her face nearly cracked. I'm just worried you'll lose it. I looked at her. I'm worried you'll lose it too. Her fingers dug into her palm. The next second, she smiled again. Fine then, we're classmates. I trust you. As she turned around, someone in the back row let out a low laugh. Shen Qingyang's footsteps stopped. She didn't turn back. She still had to maintain her dignity. At 6 in the evening, the classroom was cleared out. I walked out of the school gate with my backpack on. Parents were waiting at the gate. Some carried milk, some held admission ticket pouches. The air was thick with suppressed anxiety. I walked to the bus stop. My phone buzzed. It was a message from He Chuan. A recording, one sentence, she said it herself. I replied with 2 words, saved soon. Meng Zai also sent a photo. The copy of the initiative was crystal clear. Shen Qingyan's name was at the very top. The red fingerprint was pressed neatly. I stared at that photo for a few seconds, then locked my phone screen. It was almost dark. Starting tomorrow, everything had to be swapped back. On the morning of the first day of the college entrance exam, when I arrived at the school gate, the sky had just fully brightened. A red banner was hanging at the entrance of No. 3 High School, wishing all examinees a top score on the gold list. In my past life, I walked in from under that very banner back then. The faces around me carried a light that was almost solemn. They thought they were about to do something that would change the era. They didn't know that the era wouldn't turn back because of their 0 scores. It would only roll right over them in this life. The school gate was quiet. He Chuan, carrying a black backpack, stood under the camphor tree. Meng Zai was beside him, head down, checking her admission ticket. Yaroshu crouched on the steps, a piece of bread in his mouth, but his eyes were fixed on the other side of the school gate. When I walked over, He Chuan handed me a bottle of water. Did you sleep last night? I took the water. 4 hours. Meng Zai let out a small laugh. Better than me. Yaroshu swallowed the bread. The moment I close my eyes, I see my mom kneeling at the shop entrance, crying. After he said that, he lowered his head first. No one spoke. We all knew it wasn't a dream. The pain of our past life was like nails, driven into everyone, but in this life, we finally held the chance to pull those nails out. Shen Qingyang arrived right on time. She was wearing a clean school uniform, her hair neatly tied up. The moment she appeared, a few classmates around us automatically fell silent. Her eyes were still a little red, like she had cried last night. She held a transparent stationery pouch, the pens inside arranged one by one. She didn't look like someone about to hand in a blank exam. She looked more like someone aiming for a perfect score. Yaroshu watched her, the corner of his mouth twitching. Shen Qingyang walked up to us, her voice very soft. Everyone's here. He Chuan nodded. Yeah. She looked at me. Yi Tang, did you bring the initiative? I patted my backpack. I brought it. Her fingertips moved slightly. You can't bring it into the exam room. Is it safe with you? Safe. I'm not doubting you, she quickly added. I looked at her. I know. She couldn't continue under my gaze. Meng Zai suddenly spoke up. Qingyang, when you get into the exam room later, will you be the first to hand in? Shen Qingyang lifted her eyes. A few people nearby also looked at her. She quickly put on that soft yet determined expression. Of course, I said it yesterday. I want the invigilator to see our stance. Yaroshu immediately said, then we'll wait for your signal. Shen Qingyang was taken aback. What signal? He Chuan took over the conversation. You hand in your paper first, and we'll know the action has begun, since we're not in the same exam room. Everyone needs a reference point. Shen Qingyang's eyelashes trembled. But you can't leave the college entrance exam too early, right? Meng Zai looked at her. You can leave 2 hours after the Chinese exam starts. If you're handing in a blank paper, waiting that long doesn't mean much anyway. Shen Qingyang's lips turned slightly pale. She quickly lowered her head and smiled. I'll follow the rules. I won't cause any trouble for everyone. I said, don't be afraid, you're the initiator. We all remember. As these words fell, the smile on Shen Qingyang's face froze for half a beat. The school gate started letting people in. The crowd moved inward. Security checked admission tickets and ID cards. Shen Qingyang walked at the front, her back very straight. If you only looked at her back, she really did seem like a brave person, but I knew that bravery wasn't pushing others to the edge of a cliff. Bravery was jumping first yourself. Before entering the teaching building, He Chuan passed by me and lowered his voice. I saved 3 copies of the recording. I didn't look at him. Don't screw anything up today. I won't. Meng Zai walked past from the other side. She only said 3 words. Do well on the exam. I nodded. You too. My exam room was on the 3rd floor. Shen Qingyang's was on the 2nd. At the corner of the stairs, she suddenly turned back to look at us. That look held probing, unease, and a hint of resentment she couldn't quite hide, but she didn't say anything. The bell rang. I sat down in my seat, spread out my admission ticket, and checked my stationery. When the invigilator tore open the exam paper envelope, the entire classroom was filled with nothing but the rustle of paper. The Chinese language exam paper was handed to me. I lowered my head and saw the first question. It was so familiar it made me want to cry. In my past life, I wrote it alone in the exam room back then. I didn't know that downstairs, more than 40 people were handing over their fates. In this life, I would write it too, but I knew they would write too. The exam bell rang. I held the pen. The moment the tip touched the paper, my heart finally steadied. The wind outside was very light. In some exam room downstairs, Shen Qingyang was probably facing a blank answer sheet. She thought the whole class would follow her. But this time, only her own lie was keeping her company. At 1 hour and 40 minutes into the Chinese exam, a very soft sound of footsteps came from outside the classroom. I was in the middle of writing the second paragraph of my essay. The topic wasn't hard. The material was about choice and responsibility. When I saw the word responsibility, I almost laughed. There are always people in this world who talk about choice as if it's something heroic. In the end, they make others bear all the consequences. The proctor stood on the podium, looking at his watch. A classmate turned a page. Someone coughed. My pen never stopped. 20 minutes later, someone in the front row suddenly looked up toward the door. I didn't look up. In the college entrance exam hall, any unnecessary movement could break your rhythm, but I heard a teacher outside speaking in a low voice. Blank. Another voice was even quieter. Don't disturb the other test takers. The tip of my pen paused, just for a moment, then I kept writing. Shen Qingyang had submitted. She really did turn in a blank paper, not because she suddenly had courage, but because of yesterday's paper, yesterday's recording, and all those eyes at the school gate today. They had pushed her onto the stage she built herself. If she didn't jump, everyone below would ask her why. If she jumped, she could still bet that we would follow, but she didn't know that once someone has been burned, they won't put their hand into the same fire again. When the bell for the end of the Chinese exam rang, I had just finished writing the last word. I checked the answer sheet, I checked my name, I checked my exam ID number. Everything was correct. The proctor collected the papers. As I walked out of the exam room, the sun was so bright it made my eyes sting. In the hallway, many people were discussing the essay. When I went downstairs, I saw Shen Qingyang standing at the end of the second-floor corridor. Her face was very pale. No one was around her. She seemed to be waiting for something, waiting for someone to rush out and say, "I turned in a blank paper too," waiting for someone to say excitedly, "We did it," waiting for someone to lift her back up to that high position. But more and more people came out. Everyone was talking about the reading section, the essay, how they ran out of time. No one mentioned blank papers. Shen Qingyang's fingers gripped her stationery bag. The black pen inside was still clean. When she saw me, she immediately walked over. "Yi Tang, how did you do?" I looked at her. "Normal performance." Her eyes narrowed sharply. "What does normal performance mean?" "It means I wrote everything I was supposed to write." Her voice was so soft it was almost inaudible. "You didn't turn in a blank paper." I didn't answer. Instead, I asked her, "Did you?" Shen Qingyang's face turned even whiter. She quickly lifted her chin. "Of course I did. I said I would be the first." "Good for you." I walked past her. She grabbed my sleeve. "What about the others?" I pulled my hand back. "We all went our separate ways after the exam." I don't know. That was true. I didn't need to tell her any answers, and she couldn't stop everyone here to ask one by one, because if she asked, her persona would crack. If she asked if everyone had written the exam, it would mean she was starting to doubt this so-called collective resistance. If she demanded why others didn't turn in blank papers, it would mean she admitted she needed others to be buried with her, so she could only endure. At noon, the school arranged for the test takers to leave and rest. There were many parents at the gate. Shen Qingyang's parents were there too. Her mother was holding a thermos, her face full of worry. "Qingyang, how did it go?" Shen Qingyang hesitated, then she lowered her head. "It's okay." I passed behind her and heard those two words, "It's okay." A blank paper. How could it be okay? But her parents visibly relaxed. Her father patted her shoulder. "Don't think about the last subject. Steady yourself for the math exam this afternoon." Shen Qingyang didn't say anything. She just lifted her eyes and looked at the crowd. He Chuan was talking with his father. Meng Zai took the lunchbox her mother handed her. Yaroshu was being dragged out by his brother, his arm around his neck. Everyone looked normal, so normal that it scared Shen Qingyang. Before the math exam started in the afternoon, she finally couldn't help it. She stopped Yi Chuan at the stairway. "Monitor, did everyone follow the plan this morning?" He Chuan glanced at her. Didn't you turn yours in first? I'm asking about everyone. The exam rooms are spread out. How am I supposed to know? Shen Qingyang bit her lip. You're the monitor, He Chuan laughed, in the college entrance exam hall. Even the monitor can't visit other rooms. He walked past her and went upstairs. Shen Qingyang stood there, the color draining from her face bit by bit. The math exam began. I opened the test paper. The first multiple choice question was basic. As I wrote down the answer, I suddenly remembered the silence that had fallen over the class group chat after the math exam in my last life. They had submitted blank answer sheets, but no one had waited for the news to break. No nationwide shockwaves, no systemic reflection, only the slaps of parents, the disappointment of teachers, and a tidal wave of mockery in this life. As the tip of my pen scraped across the answer sheet, every single question was a life we were fighting to reclaim for ourselves. And downstairs, Shen Qingyang should be sitting in front of a blank exam paper right now. She was probably already starting to regret it, but regret came too late. She had signed her own name with her own hand, and she had said with her own mouth that she wouldn't shirk responsibility. The 2 days of exams felt compressed into a single, taut thread: Chinese, math, comprehensive, English. Before every exam began, Shen Qingyang would appear at the stairwell landing. She didn't dare ask too directly. She just used those watery eyes to look at everyone. Are you all okay? Don't be afraid, we'll be seen soon enough. At first, a few people still humored her with a reply, but by the time the last English exam rolled around, even those perfunctory responses had dwindled. Everyone was busy memorizing vocabulary, checking their earphones, verifying their admission tickets. No one was clustering around her anymore. Shen Qingyang finally started to get anxious. She walked up to Meng Zai. Zai, we're best friends, right? Meng Zai was looking at an essay template. She lifted her head. We used to be. Shen Qingyang froze. What do you mean by that? Meng Zai closed her study materials. It means, let's talk after the exam is over. She said it very calmly, but those words were harder to take than a quarrel. Shen Qingyang's eyes reddened instantly. Did Yi Tang say something to you? I was standing not far away, and when I heard my name, I lifted my gaze. Meng Zai smiled. Qingyang, every time something goes wrong, you like to find one person to blame. This time is no different. Shen Qingyang's tears fell. Someone in the hallway looked over. Her most familiar scene was playing out again. As long as people were watching, she could act wronged. As long as she acted wronged, she could shift the problem away from herself. But today was the last exam of the college entrance exam. No one was willing to waste their emotions on her. He Chuan walked past and only said one sentence. Don't block the way. Shen Qingyang's sobs got stuck in her throat. She stood there, as if for the first time realizing that tears could also lose their effect. The English exam bell rang. The listening comprehension section began. I put on my earphones. A standard female voice came through. I pressed down on my exam paper, but my heart was very quiet. This was the last exam. Once I finished writing this paper, we could finally crawl out of the quagmire of our past life completely. After 20 minutes of listening, I quickly started on the reading comprehension. The questions weren't hard. The closed test was smooth. The essay was a letter to a friend. As I wrote the last sentence, a burst of cicada chirping fell from outside the window. The sound was very loud, like summer had finally truly begun. After the bell rang to collect the papers, someone in the classroom let out a long breath. Someone laughed out loud on the spot. Someone slumped over the desk, eyes red, as the teacher collected the answer sheets. I looked at my name column and suddenly felt a very light sense of unreality. 12 years, 2 lifetimes. Finally, it hadn't been in vain. As I walked out of the exam hall, the hallway erupted into chaos. Liberated, all-nighter tonight. I never want to look at functions again. Yaro Shu rushed up from the stairwell, nearly crashing into me. Yi Tang, I finished writing, he shouted very loudly. Everyone around looked at him, but he was laughing, his eyes red-rimmed. I fucking finished it. Meng Zai followed behind, her eyes also red. Me too. He Chuan stood on the stairs and raised a hand to rub his forehead. He wasn't smiling, but I could see that his hand was shaking the whole time. That wasn't fear, it was the tension Finally being released, I said, "It's all over." Yaroshu nodded emphatically. "Yeah, it's over." The next second, a very soft voice came from downstairs. "What's over?" We all looked over at the same time. Shen Qingyang stood on the first floor landing. She was still clutching that transparent stationery pouch. After 4 exams, the pens inside it were still clean enough to be glaring. She looked up at us. A forced smile hung on her face. "What did you say you finished writing?" The air suddenly went still. The smile on Yaroshu's face slowly faded. Meng Zai glanced at me. He Chuan spoke first, said we finished writing the English essay. Shen Qingyan's pupils contracted. She opened her mouth. "Didn't you all?" She stopped mid-sentence, because there were other examinees in the hallway. Because she couldn't shout out the words "submitted blank papers here," because once she shouted them out, everyone would know what she had done. She bit her lip, tears swirling in her eyes. "You lied to me." He Chuan walked down 2 steps. His voice wasn't loud. "Qingyang, don't talk nonsense. The exam is over, everyone's emotions are unstable. If the pressure is too much, go home and rest." Those words were far too familiar in the last life, after the results came out. Shen Qingyang said exactly that to the media. She said her classmates were under too much pressure and made irrational choices. Now, He Chuan was throwing them back at her. Verbatim, Shen Qingyan's face turned as white as paper. She looked at me. "Yi Tang, did you know all along?" I neither denied nor admitted it. I simply said, "You chose your own path. Don't ask why others didn't walk it with you." Her body swayed. From outside the school gate came the shouts of parents. The crowd surged outward. Shen Qingyang was pushed to the stairwell landing, like a piece of paper that could be crushed underfoot at any moment. But this wasn't the most painful part yet. The most painful days were still to come, when the results were released. After Shen Qingyan's words fell, the stairwell seemed to have a hand clamped over its throat. The examinees around them were still streaming out. Some were hugging their classmates and shouting, some were calling their parents, some were crying, saying they had finally finished the exams. Only in their little corner was it so quiet it didn't feel like the end of the college entrance exam. Shen Qingyang stared at He Chuan, then at Meng Zai, finally at me. She wanted to ask, but she couldn't. If she asked why we had written the exam papers, she would be exposing the fact that she had turned in blank sheets. If she accused us of deceiving her, she would be admitting that the initiative letter was real. She was the best at crying. But at this moment, even her tears fell cautiously. Because there were too many people around, she still wanted to keep her face clean. I walked past her down the stairs. Suddenly, she reached out and grabbed my backpack strap. I stopped. "Let go." Her voice was low. "Yi Tang, give me that piece of paper." "What piece of paper?" Her expression changed. She didn't dare say its name. I looked at her. "If you want something, say it out loud." Her eyes reddened further. "We're classmates. Do you have to be so ruthless?" Yaroshu let out a cold laugh. "Ruthless? When you told us to turn in blank papers, you didn't think that was ruthless?" Shen Qingyang whipped her head toward him. "I didn't tell you to." The words came out, and even she seemed stunned by them. He Chuan took a step down. "Qingyang, don't speak too soon. The recording still exists." Shen Qingyan's lips drained of color. She clenched her transparent stationery bag, the veins on the back of her hand standing out. Meng Zai passed by her, her voice soft. "Don't worry, we won't make a scene at the school gate. At least not today." Shen Qingyan's head shot up. She understood. Not today didn't mean not ever. The parents at the gate surged in like a tide. Shen Qingyan's mother spotted her and rushed over. "Qingyang, all done with the exams? Tired? Mom will make you soup tonight." Shen Qingyang immediately lowered her head, hiding all her panic in her hair. A little tired." Her father came over too. "Don't overthink it. You've worked hard these 2 days. Now we just wait for good news." Shen Qingyan's shoulders trembled. Good news. Those 3 words landed on her like a heavy blow. She kept her head down, not daring to meet her parents' eyes. As I walked out of the school gate, I heard her mother's voice from behind. "Qingyang, why are the pens in your stationery bag so clean?" The crowd was too noisy. I didn't catch the rest, but Shen Qingyan's back stiffened noticeably. Yaroshu caught up with me, his smile long gone. "She really dared to say that. I didn't tell you to." He Chuan took out his phone and checked the battery. "That's why we need to save the recording in multiple places. Meng Zai added, "And the initiative letter?" I nodded. "The original is with me. I'll scan it tonight." "Everyone gets a copy." Yaroshu let out a long breath. In the last life, she pushed all the blame onto us without a word of encouragement. In this life, let's see who she can push it onto. No one spoke again. The wind at the bus stop was hot. As hot as that deadly sun at the school gate on the day the results came out in the last life. That day, someone was slapped to the ground by their father. Someone kept refreshing their phone, as if refreshing could erase a zero score. Someone stood by the roadside laughing, then laughing until they cried, and Shen Qingyang stood before the interview camera, her skirt clean, her eyes innocent. She said she was very sad. She said she respected everyone's choices. She said she had never been qualified to decide anyone else's life back then. I watched that video in my dormitory in another province. I turned off the screen and didn't sleep for a long time. Now we were standing here again. Everyone had crawled back from that summer. No one would give her a second chance. At 8 in the evening, files began to appear in the temporary group chat, recording backups, photos of the initiative letter, scanned copies, everyone's exam recollections. I spread the original document flat on my desk. The 3 characters, Shen Qingyang, sat at the very top. Beside them, the red fingerprint looked like a drop of blood that hadn't yet dried. I had just resealed the file envelope when my phone suddenly vibrated. It was a message from my homeroom teacher, Yi Tang. "Come to school tomorrow at 9 in the morning. Someone reported that you organized classmates to collude on answers before the exam." The next morning, when I arrived at school, the banners at No. 3 high school still hadn't been taken down. The 4 characters for golden list tops fluttered in the wind. The security guard looked at me, his expression complicated. I knew what was going on. Shen Qingyang had made her move. She didn't dare ask for clarification outside the exam hall, so she had to muddy the waters first. As long as she could frame us as colluding, as bullying, as coercion before the exam, she could once again become the good student who had been wronged by the whole class. The office door was open. My homeroom teacher sat at the very back. He Chuan had already arrived. Meng Zai was also there. Yaroshu leaned against the wall, his face cold. Shen Qingyang sat by the window. Her eyes were red and swollen, a tissue clutched in her hand. Her mother sat beside her, her face full of concern. Her father's face was ashen when she saw me come in. Shen Qingyang's mother immediately stood up. "You're Yi Tang. What exactly did you do to my daughter?" My homeroom teacher frowned. "Parents, please calm down first." Shen Qingyang's mother's voice trembled. "She's been crying ever since she got back from the college entrance exam. She won't eat, she won't talk. She said someone forced her to sign something and threatened her. This is the college entrance exam. How could you harm people like this?" I looked at Shen Qingyang. She kept her head down. Tears fell drop by drop. Her posture was as practiced as if she had rehearsed it countless times. My homeroom teacher looked at me, his tone heavy. "Yi Tang, Qingyang says you guys made something before the exam, and recorded it. What exactly is going on here?" I put down my backpack. I unzipped it. When I took out the transparent file envelope, Shen Qingyang's hand visibly tensed. I didn't open it right away. "Teacher, before I say anything, I want to ask Shen Qingyang one question first." My homeroom teacher nodded. I looked at her. "You say we forced you to sign. How did we force you?" Shen Qingyang lifted her head. Her eyes were full of tears. "You all stared at me like that. If I didn't sign, you'd say I was fake. That I was using everyone's future as a stepping stone." Her voice choked. "I was really scared at the time." Yaroshu almost laughed out loud. "You didn't look scared when you were giving that speech from the podium." Shen Qingyang's mother immediately glared at him. "How dare you talk to her like that?" He Chuan placed his phone on the desk. "Teacher, let's listen to the recording first." Shen Qingyang's eyes snapped up. Her father frowned. "What recording?" He Chuan tapped play. The sound of the classroom's fan came through first, then Shen Qingyang's voice followed. "She talked about the day before the exam. She said the exam-oriented education system was a cage. She said if we all handed in blank papers together, the whole country would see us." The office slowly fell silent. Shen Qingyang's crying stopped. The anger on her mother's face froze bit by bit. The recording continued. He Chuan said just talking wasn't enough. Meng Zai wrote a proposal. Shen Qingyang said there was no need to be so formal. Then came my line. You can't just stand on the podium shouting slogans and expect others to gamble their futures. Shen Qingyang was silent for a long time on the recording, then came the sound of a pen tip scratching across paper. She said it herself. I'll sign. No one spoke in the office, only the voice from the phone kept spilling out, word by word. I'll be the first to hand in a blank paper. I won't shirk responsibility. If anyone asks who proposed it, of course it was me. I won't shirk responsibility. When the last sentence fell, He Chuan pressed stop. Shen Qingyan's face was pale as a sheet. Her mother slowly turned her head to look at her. Qingyang, what's going on? Shen Qingyan's lips trembled. I was just in a bad mood then. I didn't think they'd take it seriously. Meng Zai lifted her eyes. But you made us take it seriously. You said it was an action. You said the whole country would see. You even said you'd be the first. Shen Qingyan's tears fell again. I didn't mean any harm. Those 4 words made the air in the office even colder. Yarrow Shu stared at her. You said the same thing in your last life. His voice was very low, so low that only a few of us could hear, but Shen Qingyan's head snapped up at that moment. The look in her eyes was like being pierced by a needle. She understood. So she wasn't the only one with memories of the previous life. No, she probably never thought we would remember too. She had always thought she was holding the knife of a prophet, able to cut us all again. My homeroom teacher didn't catch what Yaroshu said. He just looked at the file envelope on the desk. Yi Tang, what's inside? I opened the file envelope. I spread the original document flat on the table when the words letter of proposal appeared. Shen Qingyan's mother's face changed completely. Her father took the paper. He read it from the first line to the last. His finger stopped at the name and red thumbprint at the top. I, Shen Qingyang, voluntarily initiate the action of submitting blank exam papers for the college entrance exam. I promise to submit blank papers for all 4 subjects. I promise not to answer any questions, not to fill in any answer sheets, and not to submit any valid scores. I promise that if I violate this proposal, I will willingly apologize publicly to the entire class and bear all consequences. Shen Qingyan's father's hand began to tremble. The homeroom teacher also stood up. Qingyang, is this really your signature? Shen Qingyang bit her lip hard. She still wanted to cry, but this time, tears were useless. Because black words on white paper were harder than tears, the homeroom teacher was silent for a long time, then picked up the desk phone. Don't leave yet. This matter, I need to notify the grade group. Shen Qingyang suddenly stood up. Teacher, you can't notify them. Everyone looked at her. She only then realized she had been too obvious in her urgency. She sat back down, her voice trembling. I mean, the exam is already over. There's no need to make a big deal out of it. The homeroom teacher looked at her. Before the college entrance exam, you incited classmates to submit blank papers, and then you turned around and reported classmates for colluding to cheat. Shen Qingyang, do you think that's not worth making a big deal? Shen Qingyan's face turned gray inch by inch. Just as the call connected, hurried footsteps came from the end of the hallway. The dean of students pushed the door open. He was holding another set of reporting materials. Hold on, the city admissions office just called. Someone anonymously sent them the situation in your class. Who sent the anonymous materials? No one admitted, but we all knew it was impossible that only one person wanted to push the evidence forward. In the previous life, the lives of more than 40 people were buried under a single, light regret. In this life, no one was willing to wait until the dust settled to cry out for justice. The dean closed the door. The atmosphere in the office changed instantly. The homeroom teacher looked at us. His brow deeply furrowed. This matter is no longer just a conflict within the class. The city is asking whether there were students who organized a group boycott of the exam before the college entrance exam. Shen Qingyang immediately looked up. Teacher, I didn't organize anything. Yi Chuan looked at her coldly. The phone was still on the table. The proposal was still on the table. Her words only pushed herself deeper into the pit. The dean picked up the paper and looked at it. His expression grew darker. Did you sign this? Shen Qingyan's lips trembled for a long time. Yes, and the person in the recording who said they would be the first to submit a blank paper, was that also you? Her tears surged again. I was just under too much pressure. I didn't know what I was saying at the time. Meng Zai suddenly spoke. You knew. Shen Qingyang looked at her. Meng Zai's voice was steady. You knew exactly what words would move us the most. You knew whose families were strict, who was afraid of failure, who held grudges against the school, who was easiest to ignite. You weren't just saying it casually, you were picking at our wounds. After these words fell, the office became even quieter. Shen Qingyang's mother's face was ugly. She wanted to argue, but the recording and the proposal were right in front of them. She could only grip her bag strap tightly, her voice hollow. Qingyang has always been a good girl. She might really have been under too much pressure. Yaroshu laughed. When pressure is high, it's okay to make others submit blank papers. Then why didn't anyone say pressure is high for me in my past life? This time, his voice wasn't quiet. The homeroom teacher finally looked at him. Yaroshu, what past life are you talking about? Yaroshu's smile froze. He Chuan took over the conversation. Teacher, he hasn't slept well these past couple of days. He's talking nonsense. The homeroom teacher glanced at him. He didn't press further. The college entrance exam had just ended. No one would take the idea of rebirth seriously. They would only think the students were overly stressed, but Shen Qingyang was different. She understood every word. Her gaze moved from Yaroshu's face to He Chuan's face, then to Meng Zai's face. Finally, it landed on me for the first time. There was genuine fear in it. She finally realized this wasn't my counterattack alone. It was the entire class of more than 40 people, carrying the hatred from their previous lives. Silently encircling her, the dean had each of us write a statement of explanation, from who proposed it first, what was said, who demanded signatures, whether there was coercion, whether there was an exchange of interests, whether the exam order was affected. I picked up my pen. The first line I wrote very slowly. On the afternoon before the college entrance exam, Shen Qingyang voluntarily proposed the blank paper initiative inside classroom 3 of senior year 7. He Chuan wrote quickly, Meng Zai wrote steadily. Yaroshu, halfway through, punctured the paper with his pen tip outside the office. Classmates from our class arrived one after another. They entered one by one. They wrote their statements one by one. Everyone's first sentence was almost the same. Shen Qingyang offered first. Shen Qingyang urged everyone on. Shen Qingyang promised to be the first to turn in a blank exam paper. Shen Qingyang said she wouldn't shirk responsibility. Those names lined up together were more glaring than the red fingerprints on the proposal. Shen Qingyang sat in the corner, the color draining from her face bit by bit. Her mother went from initial anger to silence. Her father hadn't spoken the whole time until the 17th explanation was placed on the table. He suddenly asked her, "Did you write your Chinese exam or not?" Shen Qingyang's whole body trembled. Everyone's gaze fell on her. She kept her head down and didn't make a sound for a long time. Her father's voice grew heavier. "What about math? What about the comprehensive exam? What about English?" Shen Qingyang's tears splashed onto her knees. Finally, she whispered, "I did what I promised." As soon as those words came out, her mother nearly collapsed. The homeroom teacher closed his eyes. The dean's expression also changed. No one in the office asked her how she did on the exam anymore. The answer was already right there, but she still didn't know our answer. She only knew she had turned hers in. She only knew that we might not have. That word might was enough to torment her until the day the results were announced. Leaving the school, Shen Qingyang chased us into the hallway. She wasn't crying anymore. Her voice was hoarse and strained. "Yi Tang, did you guys actually turn in your exams or not?" I turned to look at her. "Wait for the results." Her expression cracked instantly. "You're really going to do this to me?" I stared at her. "You did it to everyone else first." She took a step forward. "But didn't you all come back?" As soon as she said that, she froze herself. The breeze in the hallway was light. All of us looked at her at the same time. Shen Qingyang had finally said the words she shouldn't have said. He Chuan slowly turned around. "So, you do remember?" After those words fell in the hallway, the wind seemed to stop. Shen Qingyang stood there, her face even paler than before. She opened her mouth but couldn't form a complete sentence. He Chuan stared at her. "What do you remember?" A flicker of panic crossed Shen Qingyang's eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about." Yaroshu stepped forward. "You said it yourself just now. You said, didn't you all come back?" Shen Qingyang, "How did you know we came back?" Her lips trembled violently. She looked at me, and the usual soft, watery light in her eyes was gone. Only resentment remained. "Yi Tang, you started this. You wanted to ruin me from the very beginning." I looked back at her. The person who stood at the lectern the day before the college entrance exam was you. The first person to sign the proposal was you. The one who said in the recording that she'd be the first to turn in a blank exam paper was also you. And you still want to shift the blame to others. Her tears welled up again, but this time, her crying was ugly, not from grievance, from fear. The homeroom teacher's voice came from the office doorway. You all still haven't left. Shen Qingyang immediately shut her mouth when she turned around. The expression on her face had already switched back to one of injury. Teacher, I just wanted to clear things up with my classmates. The homeroom teacher looked at her for a moment. That look was different from before. In the past, the teacher saw her as a stable top student. Now, he looked at her like she was a suddenly wrong final exam problem. What needed to be explained has already been explained. Go home and wait for the notice. Don't bother your classmates privately anymore. Shen Qingyang's shoulder trembled slightly. Her father came out of the office. Qingyang, let's go. His voice was heavy, not comforting. Shen Qingyang lowered her head and followed him. As she passed by us, she suddenly said in a voice only we could hear, "You won't get away with this. The college entrance exam results aren't out yet. No one can prove you actually wrote anything." Yaroshu chuckled. Then just wait. Her footsteps faltered. I saw her fingers clench, her nails almost digging into her palms. She still didn't look back. She had to hold it together because the moment she admitted she was afraid, she would lose completely. On the way home, the temporary group chat kept buzzing. The people who had gone to the school to write their explanations were sending messages one after another. Someone said Shen Qingyang's mother had cried. Someone said the grade group had made a copy of the recording. Someone said the city admissions office had requested a full report from the school. Someone asked if it would affect our scores. The group was silent for a moment. Then He Chuan sent a message. No, we didn't cheat. We didn't exchange answers. The exam hall remained undisturbed. We simply kept the evidence of her instigating the exam boycott. Meng Zai quickly followed up with a message. Everyone, don't scare yourselves for no reason. Just wait for the results normally. After she sent that, the group chat gradually quieted down. I sat in the back of the bus, watching the street scenes recede outside the window. The walls of No. 3 high school grew farther and farther away. A roadside shop hung a sign advertising a big sale after the college entrance exam. In my past life, all these colors appeared gray to me because every time I saw a lively scene, I would think of those who turned in blank answer sheets. They should have also walked into a university. They should have bought new phones. They should have discussed their college preferences with their families. They should have enjoyed a bit of lightness that summer. But they had nothing. This time, the gears of fate had finally turned in a different direction. But Shen Qingyang hadn't completely fallen yet. She was still holding on to a sliver of hope. She didn't know whether we had actually written or not. She also didn't know how many people in the entire class remembered the past life. At 10 in the evening, He Chuan suddenly posted a screenshot in the group chat. Someone had created a new anonymous post. The title was jarring. Class 7, Senior Year at No. 3 High School, Collective Bullying of the Class Beauty Causing Her College Entrance Exam Failure. The post claimed that Shen Qingyang was a well-known excellent student in the entire school. It said that before the exam, she was besieged by classmates and forced to sign an absurd promise. It said someone recorded her with threats, pushing her to a mental breakdown. It said she had a chance to be the top scorer in the city. The last line was the most venomous. If she really fails, those people are the murderers who destroyed a genius. The group chat exploded instantly. Yaroshu sent a voice message, his voice cold as ice. She made the first move. I stared at those lines for a long time. Then I took a new photo of the original initiative letter. This time, I even captured the crease marks on the paper corner clearly. I sent it into the group chat. Don't rush. She wants to muddy the waters. We'll make every drop clear. Just as the message was sent, my phone vibrated again. It wasn't a group message. It was a text from an unknown number. Yi Tang, leave some room for others. Otherwise, when the results are announced, no one will have an easy time. I stared at that text for a few seconds. The number had no note, but the tone was too familiar, always placing herself in the victim's position. Always feeling that others fighting back means no mercy. I took a screenshot and sent it to the group. He Chuan quickly replied, "Save it." Meng Zai said, "Don't reply." Yaroshu directly wrote, I've already saved the entire post. Not long after, the anonymous post started getting replies. At first, they were all sympathetic to Shen Qingyang. Some said bullying before the exam was disgusting, some said top students are most prone to jealousy, some said no, 3 high school must provide an explanation, some also pointed fingers at us, especially at me. The post didn't use my full name, only Yi Mao, but people from the same school knew who it was immediately. Some said Yi Mao was usually reclusive, some said she had always disliked Shen Qingyang. Some even said that since she dared to stir things up only after the exam ended, she must want to ruin Shen Qingyang's recommendation and reputation. I looked at those words and didn't get angry because in the past life, everyone had similarly cursed those who turned in blank papers. They didn't know the truth, they only needed a target that was easy to bully. But this time, we had evidence. At 11:30, the homeroom teacher posted a notice in the group. No one is allowed to post unverified information online. At 10 a.m. tomorrow, the school will handle this uniformly. After the message, he privately messaged me, Yi Tang, don't respond to the online matter for now, the school already knows. I replied, teacher, I will preserve the evidence. He took a long time before responding. Don't be afraid either. Those 4 words made me pause. In my past life, the homeroom teacher hadn't had a chance to say something like that. Back then, when the results came out, everything was already irreversible. He was cornered and cursed at by parents in the office, forced by the school to write self-criticisms, finally transferred to a lower grade. He was just someone who had been kept in the dark too. This time, at least he knew beforehand. The next morning, the school's response was faster than we had expected. No, 3 high school's official account issued a brief statement. It said that in Class 7, senior year, there was indeed a student who proposed the initiative to turn in blank papers before the exam. The school had cooperated with relevant departments for verification. After a preliminary investigation, there was no evidence of collusion among classmates to cheat. The school would continue to investigate the source of the false information online. The statement didn't name anyone, but it released the most crucial sentence. There was indeed a student who proposed the initiative to turn in blank papers. The direction of the post's comments immediately shifted. Someone asked, so it wasn't bullying. Someone asked, who would make a classmate hand in a blank exam paper right before the college entrance exam? Someone asked if that class beauty had lost her mind. The anonymous poster was probably getting anxious. Soon after, they added another long reply. They said Shen Qingyang only said it casually when she was emotionally breaking down. They said the truly vicious ones were those who set her up with recordings and papers. They said a girl being forced to hand in a blank paper, and then getting cyberbullied, was too pitiful. After reading that paragraph, I suddenly laughed. She's still using this tactic, passing off initiative as casual talk, passing off promises as a breakdown, passing off others protecting themselves as a setup. But she forgot, in this life, I'm not the only one who remembers every one of her lies. At noon, He Chuan organized the clearest parts of the recording into text. He didn't release the audio, he only sent it to the school. Meng Zai organized the timeline of every classmate's statement. Yao Shu placed the anonymous post's release time alongside the text message timestamps. The Life Committee member added another photo. It was a picture she accidentally took of the back of the classroom when the initiative letter was being signed in. The photo, Shen Qingyang stood at the podium. Her eyes were red, a pen was in her hand. On the paper in front of her, her name was already written. No one was holding her down, no one was surrounding her. She even lifted her chin slightly, like someone who had just won applause. After the photo was sent to the group, everyone was quiet for a while. Then someone said, "So it really was her." Another person said, "I almost got led astray by the post last night. How can she still be like this?" No one answered because we had asked this question too many times in our past life. In the afternoon, Shen Qingyang's mother called the homeroom teacher. The content of the call somehow got out. Her mother said the online harm to Qingyang was too much. She demanded the school delete the statement. She demanded we apologize to Shen Qingyang. She also said if this affected her daughter's reputation, their family wouldn't let it go. The homeroom teacher only replied with one sentence, "What affects her reputation? Isn't the truth being made public? It's that she did this thing." When this sentence was passed to the group, Yao Shu sent a clapping emoji. I didn't send anything, I just looked out the window at the sky. The midsummer clouds hung low like a rainstorm was on its way in the evening. An unknown number sent another text message this time. It was only one sentence. Do you think your grades can save you? Before I could screenshot it, my phone suddenly rang. The caller was Shen Qingyang. I stared at the number jumping on the screen, pressed record, then I answered. Her voice came through the earpiece, light, like a thread about to snap. Yi Tang, let's talk. I didn't say anything. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Shen Qingyang seemed to be waiting for me to speak first. But I was no longer going to hand her a stepping stone. In the end, she couldn't hold back. The online stuff wasn't posted by me. I watched the recording time tick away second by second. I didn't ask. Her breathing faltered. You don't believe me? That's not important. What's important is, what do you want to talk about? A very soft sobbing sound came from the other end. If it were before, hearing her cry like this, someone in the class would always soften first, but now, I just found it noisy. Shen Qingyang said, I know you all hate me, but it's already happened. Even if you destroy me, you can't change the past. I asked in a low voice, which part of the past are you talking about? She suddenly went silent on the other end. I held the phone, my heart very calm. Is it the part where you encouraged them to hand in blank papers, but you yourself took the city's top scholar? Or the part where you stood in front of the camera and said you never encouraged anyone? Or the part where someone failed their retake? Someone went out to work. Someone sent me a message in the middle of the night saying they regretted it. Shen Qingyang's breathing grew heavier. Yi Tang, you remember too. I didn't respond to her. She seemed to finally drop the act, a hint of sharpness creeping into her voice. Since you all remember, then you should know that in my past life, I didn't actually kill anyone. They're still alive now, aren't they? My fingers tightened bit by bit. Being alive doesn't mean they weren't destroyed, she said urgently. But in this life, I've already handed in a blank paper. I've already paid the price. What more do you want? I looked at the file bag on the table. Wait for the results to come out. She seemed stung by those 4 words. Did you guys actually hand it in or not? I didn't answer. Her voice started to tremble. Yi Tang, tell me. If you just tell me, I can go to the school and withdraw the report. I can make that post disappear. I can also stop pursuing the matter of your recording. I let out a soft laugh. You're still trying to negotiate terms. Have you forgotten? You were the one who filed the report. You were also the one behind that post. The recording is to prove what you said, not to beg you to let us go. A heavy intake of breath came through the phone. Shen Qingyang lowered her voice. Don't push me. I have nothing left. A person with nothing will do anything. I moved the phone a little away from my ear. I confirmed the recording was still going. Then I said, Shen Qingyang, I'll keep that sentence. She went completely silent on her end. A few seconds later, the call ended. I sent the recording to He Chuan. He quickly replied with 2 words, received. Meng Zai also listened. She said, she's panicking. I replied, she's not panicking. She's realized that tears can't get her control back. Over the next few days, the situation grew bigger and bigger. After the anonymous post was deleted, someone else reposted it. The school didn't say much more, only telling all students and parents to wait for the official result. The city admissions office didn't respond publicly, but our homeroom teacher told us that someone had already come to collect materials. The original petition was temporarily left with the school for safekeeping. Before I handed it over, I filmed a complete video from opening the file bag, to spreading out the paper, to every name and fingerprint. I wasn't afraid of the school losing it. I was only afraid that Shen Qingyang had a backup plan, and as it turned out, she did. On the 3rd day, a short video account posted a tearful confession. The video didn't show a full face, only the back of a girl in a school uniform. The caption read, bullied by classmates before the college entrance exam, mentally collapsed, handed in a blank paper. Who will save her? In the video, the girl sat by the window, her shoulders shook. The voiceover was a female voice, altered. She was always excellent. She just wanted to say a proper goodbye to her classmates, but she was maliciously guided into signing something she shouldn't have. Now everyone is waiting to see her make a fool of herself. Does a senior high school girl deserve to be destroyed like this? The video was quickly shared. The comments section exploded again. Some people cursed the school, some cursed the classmates, Some said that children under the pressure of the college entrance exam should all be protected. Others asked if she was guided. Why did she promise to hand in blank papers for all 4 subjects? That comment was quickly deleted. Yaroshu was furious in the group chat, sending several messages. She's still at it. Does she think the whole world has no brains? Hechuan said. Don't curse. Keep taking screenshots. Meng Zai sent a message. Right now, she's most afraid of the results, so she needs to package herself as a victim before the results come out. I watched that tearful video. At the very end, the camera swept over a transparent pencil case. The black pen inside was blindingly clean. I suddenly felt that Shen Qingyang might not really think she was wrong. She just thought that this time, she lost without dignity. That evening, a new person suddenly appeared in the class group chat. After Shen Qingyang left the group, her mother used her account to pull her back in. Immediately after, a long block of text popped up. Dear classmates and parents, Qingyang hasn't eaten for several days. She's just a child. Even if she said the wrong thing, she shouldn't be attacked by so many people. Please delete the recordings and photos. Give her a way out. The group was silent for a full minute. Then, the girl who was usually the most timid sent a message. Auntie, in our previous lives, we were just children too. After that message was sent, the class group chat fell dead silent. Shen Qingyan's mother quickly replied, what do you mean by that? No one answered. That girl then withdrew her message, but withdrawing was useless. Everyone who needed to see it had already seen it. The parents didn't understand the weight of the words previous lives. They would only think the kids were speaking in anger, but Shen Qingyang understood. On the other side of the screen, she must have understood too. A few seconds later, her mother continued, don't use this kind of talk to provoke Qingyang. Her mental state is very bad right now. If something happens to her, who will take responsibility? Yaroshu replied directly. When she encouraged us to hand in blank papers before the exam, did she think about responsibility? The group went quiet again. This time, it wasn't that no one dared to speak, it was that everyone was waiting for the first parent to step forward. Soon, Meng Zai's mother sent a voice message. Her voice was slow, but every word was pressed down with anger. Qingyan's mother, my daughter told me everything after she got home. I don't care if your daughter is under pressure. Making others joke about the college entrance exam is wrong. We're not asking your family for an explanation only because the kids have been classmates for 3 years. After this voice message was sent, Yaroshu's older brother also sent a message. Don't use pity as a shield. Whose child isn't a child? Then, one by one, other parents began to speak. Some said their child came home that day with a strange look on their face. Some said they were glad the evidence had been kept. Some said if they had been tricked into handing in a blank exam, their whole life would be ruined. Shen Qingyan's mother initially tried to explain. She said Qingyang didn't mean it. She said Qingyang was just too naive. She said Qingyang had never been wronged since she was a child, so she couldn't get over it for a moment. But the more she explained, the more the anger in the group grew. Finally, the homeroom teacher stepped in. Please, parents, don't argue in the group for now. The school is cooperating with the investigation. All materials will be based on written records and audio recordings. No one should put pressure on the students privately. After this message was sent, the group slowly quieted down. I put my phone on the table outside the window. The rain finally started to fall. Raindrops pounded against the security bars, dense and urgent. Like that night, someone finally spoke the words we had been holding in for so long. The next day, the homeroom teacher told us to come to school to supplement the materials. This time, it wasn't just the few of us. Almost half of Class 7, Grade 12, showed up. Some came with their parents, some came alone. Everyone sat in the meeting room, no one speaking loudly, but I saw many people's eyes were red. That wasn't grievance, it was the after effect of holding it in for too long. The dean of students sat at the front. Beside him were the grade leader and 2 staff members from the city. They weren't wearing uniforms, but their presence made the whole meeting room tense up. The staff member said, today, we mainly need to verify 2 things. First, whether anyone organized students to skip the exam. Second, whether anyone used this to falsely accuse others of cheating or bullying. Shen Qingyang didn't come. Her parents came instead. Her mother's eyes were swollen badly. Her father kept his head down from the moment he walked in. The staff member had everyone explain their accounts in order. He Chuan spoke first. He said Shen Qingyang voluntarily took the stage to speak. He said he proposed written confirmation to avoid anyone backing out later. He said he didn't ask anyone to hand in a blank exam. Meng Zai followed. She explained the text of the initiative. Word by word, she said if Shen Qingyang wasn't the initiator, she could have simply refused. She said no one in the class stopped her from leaving the classroom when it was Yaroshu's turn. He was silent for a long time, then he said, I did join in the commotion at the time, but I did it to make her commit to her words, because I didn't want to be fooled by her a second time. The staff member looked up. What do you mean by a second time? The meeting room fell silent. Yaroshu looked at me. I knew he almost said it out loud. I shook my head gently. He clenched his hand. She usually uses tears to make others clean up her messes. The staff member didn't press further. When it was my turn, I handed over the timeline I had prepared, from Shen Qingyang's first speech on stage, to the signing of the initiative, to the audio backup, to her reporting us for colluding to cheat after the exam, to the anonymous posts and text message threats. I had written down every single time point clearly. The staff member flipped to the last page and stopped. This unknown number. Have you checked it? I said. No, but I've saved the texts and call recordings. He nodded. Submit them to us. Shen Qingyang's mother finally couldn't sit still. But my daughter really did hand in a blank exam. She's already been punished. Why are you still going after her? No one spoke in the meeting room. The staff member looked at her. We're not investigating her score. We're investigating whether she tried to influence other students' normal exams, and whether she spread false information afterward. Shen Qingyang's mother's lips moved, but she couldn't say another word. Just then, there was a knock on the meeting room door. The homeroom teacher stepped out to take a call. When he came back, his face was very grim. He looked at us, then at Shen Qingyang's parents. Qingyang is at the school gate right now. She said if we don't give her an explanation today, she won't leave. By the time everyone arrived at the school gate, the rain hadn't stopped. Shen Qingyang stood next to the security booth. She wasn't holding an umbrella. Her school uniform was soaked through, her hair plastered against her cheeks. Her mother spotted her and rushed over immediately. Qingyang, what are you doing? Shen Qingyang looked up. Her eyes were red, terrifyingly so. She saw us walking out of the teaching building, and her body trembled slightly, but she didn't run away. It was as if she had finally found a new method, putting herself in everyone's line of sight. As long as she looked pathetic enough, someone would always soften. A few people had already gathered outside the school gate. Some were even holding up their phones to record. Shen Qingyang's voice was nearly drowned out by the rain, but it was just loud enough for everyone at the gate to hear. I just want an apology. I'm really not a bad person. I was just under too much pressure and said the wrong thing. Why does everyone have to push me? Her mother hugged her, crying, don't say any more. But Shen Qingyang pushed her away. She looked at her mother, then looked at me. Yi Tang, are you satisfied now? Rainwater dripped down the edge of my umbrella. I didn't step closer. What explanation do you want? She bit her lip. Admit it. Admit that you all set me up to sign that paper. Yaroshu let out a cold laugh. Say that again, in front of all these people. Who was the first to bring up turning in blank exams? Shen Qingyang's tears rolled down. I mentioned it, but I was just talking. You guys put me in that position. You left me no way out. He Chuan tilted his umbrella forward a little. If you had no way out, why did you keep asking us before the exam if we would follow through? If you were just talking, why did you actually turn in blank papers for all 4 subjects? Shen Qingyang's face went pale for an instant. More people were gathering at the gate now. Someone whispered, what's this about blank exams? Did she really turn in blank college entrance exams? Isn't that just her losing her mind? Shen Qingyang heard them. She started crying even harder. See, this is how they are. They want to drive me to death. The head teacher's face darkened. Shen Qingyang, watch your wording. This is the school gate. Stop inciting the crowd. Shen Qingyang acted as if she hadn't heard. She suddenly turned her gaze toward the silent classmates. What about you? You all agreed back then. You all signed. What right do you have to play the victim now? No one answered her. Everyone just looked at her. That kind of gaze was more unbearable than any scolding. because there was no pity in it, only coldness. Meng Zai stepped out from under her umbrella. The rain instantly soaked her shoulder. She stood in front of Shen Qingyang. We signed so you couldn't lie anymore. Not to hand our lives over to you. Shen Qingyang stared at her. So you tricked me from the start. Meng Zai gave a faint smile. Weren't you planning to trick us when you went up on stage? For a split second, Shen Qingyang's expression cracked. In that moment, the onlookers might not have understood, but we all did. What she feared most wasn't being yelled at, it was being seen through. The official from the city also stepped out. He didn't have an umbrella, he just stood on the steps at the gate. Shen Qingyang, every word you say now could become part of the follow-up investigation materials. If you believe you were coerced, please clearly state the method of coercion. If this is just an emotional outburst, please do not use false statements to accuse others. Shen Qingyang looked up at him. Rain mixed with tears dripped down her face. She opened her mouth. They watched me. The official asked, other than that, they made me sign. Did anyone restrict you from leaving? Shen Qingyang was silent. Did anyone threaten your personal safety? She was still silent. Did anyone say that if you didn't sign, they would hurt you or your family? Shen Qingyang's lips trembled. She couldn't answer. The onlookers began murmuring. Her mother tried to pull her away, but Shen Qingyang seemed nailed to the spot. She finally looked at me. That gaze was cold, not like someone who had just been crying. Yi Tang, don't think you've won. I looked at her. I wasn't trying to win against you. I just want everyone to do well on the exam. She suddenly smiled. It was a light laugh, but it sounded harsh and grating. The results aren't out yet. Who knows if you all haven't messed up too? The moment those words were spoken, the faces of every classmate changed color. She had finally revealed her true thoughts. She wasn't regretting her own mistake, she was just hoping that we would fall down with her. The homeroom teacher's voice was stern. That's enough. Shen Qingyang's father rushed over and grabbed her wrist. Let's go home. Shen Qingyang struggled for a moment. Dad, her father's voice trembled. Haven't you embarrassed us enough? Shen Qingyang froze completely. She had probably never been scolded by her father in public like this before. As she was being pulled away, she turned back to look at me. There were no tears in that gaze, only hatred. That night, the video from the school gate was posted online, but this time, the video wasn't speaking for her. The first line was her asking in the rain, "What right do you have to act like victims now?" The video spread faster than any previous post. A few days ago, many people still thought of Shen Qingyang as a top student bullied by her classmates, but the video at the school gate was too clear. She admitted that she had brought up the idea of handing in blank papers. She admitted that everyone had signed it, but she said it was just talk. The key point was that she asked us, in public, what right we had to act like victims. That sentence was like a knife. It cut open the carefully stitched cloak of grievance she had sewn for herself. The comment section quickly turned around. Some said that joking about handing in blank papers before the college entrance exam was no small matter. Others said that she handed in 4 blank papers herself, yet blamed others for not going crazy with her. Some said it was a good thing she didn't actually become the city's top scorer, but there were still people defending her. They said she was just a child. They said she might have psychological issues. They said her classmates were too cold-blooded, but these comments were quickly buried because someone posted a screenshot of the school's official statement. Someone organized a timeline. Someone compared her conflicting statements side by side. The more Shen Qingyang tried to wash herself clean like a blank sheet of paper, the more visible the ink stains became. The school also acted quickly. The homeroom teacher told us that the grade group had submitted all the materials. The city would make a written record. But as long as there was no disruption to the exam order, the other students' scores would not be affected. When we saw this in the group chat, many of us finally breathed a sigh of relief. Yao Shu sent a message, "I haven't dared to sleep these past few days." Meng Zai replied, "Now you can sleep," but He Chuan only sent 4 words, "Don't relax too early." I stared at the screen for a few seconds. I understood what he meant. The results weren't out yet. Shen Qingyang still didn't truly know the outcome. All her struggles now were built on a flimsy hope. She thought that if we also had no scores, she wouldn't lose too badly. She thought that if she could drag things into chaos, there was Still a chance to turn things around. In the days that followed, time felt stretched and slow, estimating scores, checking answers, filling out mock preference forms, attending the graduation ceremony. Every event was similar to the previous life, yet completely different. In the previous life's graduation ceremony, half the class was empty. Those who had handed in blank papers didn't want to come. Those who did come kept their heads down and stayed silent. The homeroom teacher stood at the podium, his eyes red. He didn't scold them, he just said that life was long. But those words were too light to catch the futures of more than 40 people that had crashed down. This time, on the day of the graduation ceremony, the class was fully assembled. He-chuan wore a white shirt, Meng Zai had cut her hair a little shorter. Yaroshu brought a big bag of candy, saying she wanted to sweeten away all the bad luck. When everyone took photos, they smiled a little too hard, as if laughing loud enough could prove they had truly escaped that nightmare. Shen Qingyang didn't come, her seat was empty, the old name tag was still stuck to the desk, the 3 characters of Shen Qingyang's name were faded by the sun. No one tore it off, no one mentioned it. When the homeroom teacher handed out graduation certificates, he paused for a long time at the podium. He said, "Over these 3 years, I may have fallen short in many ways, but I want you to remember, never entrust your life to someone else's slogans." The classroom was very quiet. Some people lowered their heads, some rubbed their eyes. I saw Yaroshu pop a candy into her mouth and crunch it loudly. After the ceremony, we went to the playground to take a group photo. Just before the shutter clicked, He-chuan suddenly said, "Everyone, step forward." No one falls behind this time. No one laughed at him for being sentimental. Everyone silently squeezed a little closer. The moment the photo was frozen, wind blew from the other end of the sports field. The hems of their school uniforms were lifted, like a group of people finally turning around from an old summer. The night before the results were announced, Shen Qingyang called me again. I didn't pick up. She called 3 times in a row. I declined each one. Finally, she sent a text message. "If you guys lied to me tomorrow, I won't let you have any peace." I took a screenshot and saved it. I didn't reply. Half an hour later, she sent another message. "You must have handed in your papers too, right? You're just pretending to be relaxed. Yi Tang, say something." I still didn't reply. The phone screen lit up and then dimmed like the last bit of her hope, struggling repeatedly in the darkness. At midnight, no one in the group chat was asleep. Everyone was online. No one was chatting. Only the status of typing appeared one after another, only to disappear again until 5 past midnight. The homeroom teacher suddenly sent a message. "The grade system opens at 8 tomorrow morning. After you all check your scores, don't spread them around first. The school is organizing registration at 9 o'clock. As soon as the message came through, my phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't Shen Qingyang, it was a video sent by a classmate. In the footage, Shen Qingyang was standing outside the gate of No. 3 High School. She was holding her phone. She said to the camera, "Tomorrow, I'll make everyone see the truth." The next morning, at 7:50, I sat in front of my computer. The web page wasn't open yet, but I had already pressed the refresh key so many times it felt hot. The group chat was completely silent. A row of profile pictures were lit up, but no one was talking. Everyone was waiting for that number, waiting for it to nail down the absurdity of 2 lifetimes once and for all. At 8 o'clock sharp, the system opened. I entered my exam registration number, my ID number, and the verification code. The page froze for over 10 seconds, then the scores popped up. Chinese, 127, Math, 134. Comprehensive, 241. English, 136. Total score, 638. I stared at that string of numbers, and suddenly my eyes felt hot, not because I was that surprised, but because it proved that every single stroke I had written over these 2 days hadn't been in vain. Soon, messages started popping up in the group chat. He-chuan, 672. Meng Zai, 659. Yaroshu, 588. One name after another, followed by a score. Someone posted a screenshot. Someone sent a crying emoji. Someone said their hands were still trembling. Someone said their mom just hugged them and cried. No one mentioned Shen Qingyang, but everyone knew she was waiting too. At 9 o'clock, we went back to school to register our scores. When I arrived at the gate of No. 3 High School, quite a few people were already gathered outside. Shen Qingyang was standing at the very front. She was wearing a white dress, her face pale. Holding her phone in her hand, the camera was pointed directly at the school gate. Her voice was hoarse, but she spoke very clearly. Today, I'm going to explain everything. If I've really been ruined, I want everyone to know who ruined me. People nearby murmured quietly, is she the one who handed in a blank exam paper? Wasn't she forced by her classmates? Let's wait and see what the school says. When Shen Qingyang saw me, her eyes instantly turned red. She didn't rush over. She was probably still waiting for me to show panic, waiting for all of us to have no scores to show, just like her. But He Chuan walked up from behind me, holding a printed score report in his hand. Meng Zai also came. Yaroshu followed behind, a lollipop dangling from his mouth. Shen Qingyan's gaze swept across our faces and finally landed on those pieces of paper. The expression on her face froze for a moment. The homeroom teacher stood at the door and told us to go into the classroom to register. Shen Qingyang didn't come in. She just stood at the end of the hallway as if she had to see it with her own eyes before she would believe it. In the classroom, the score registration form was spread out on the podium. He Chuan was the first to write name, exam registration number, total score, intended school. When the numbers 672 fell on the paper, Shen Qingyan's fingers suddenly tightened. Meng Zai wrote next 659. Yaroshu wrote the hardest 588. After he finished writing, he muttered softly, "My mom can finally sleep well tonight." I stepped forward and wrote down 638. When the tip of my pen stopped, I looked up toward the door. Shen Qingyang was staring intently at the form. The last bit of hope on her face finally shattered. She rushed into the classroom and grabbed the registration form. Fake. This is impossible. The homeroom teacher's face darkened. Shen Qingyang, put the form down. She acted as if she hadn't heard. She stared at the name He Chuan, then at Meng Zai's name. You all promised. You all signed. How could you possibly have scores? As soon as those words left her mouth, everyone in the classroom turned to look at her. She stopped herself mid-sentence. She had finally, after the results came out, admitted out loud that she thought the entire class would hand in blank papers. Her phone was still open in her hand. The camera hadn't been turned off. Barrage comments flew across the screen one after another. Someone asked what she meant by signed. Someone asked so it wasn't just her who was forced. Someone asked why the whole class had scores, but only she got a 0. Shen Qingyang looked down at the screen, her face turning pale as if drained of all color. She frantically tried to shut off the live stream, but Yaroshu chuckled. Don't turn it off. Didn't you want everyone to see clearly? Shen Qingyang jerked her head up to look at him. That gaze wasn't like someone who had been crying. It was like a cornered beast baring its teeth after being pushed to the wall. She suddenly slammed the registration form onto the floor. Papers scattered everywhere. You set me up. You never intended to hand in from the start. He Chuan bent down to pick up the form. His voice calm. That's right. We never planned to hand our futures over to you from the start. Shen Qingyan's breath hitched. Meng Zai looked at her. You only realize now, but it's already too late. Shen Qingyang stepped back, her lips trembling violently. She suddenly turned and ran out of the classroom. Within half a minute, her desperate shout echoed from the hallway. Teacher, I want to report this. The whole class conspired to deceive me, and it cost me a 0 on the college entrance exam. That shout from Shen Qingyang drew everyone on the entire floor out. The college entrance exam results had just come out, and the school was already chaotic. Parents, students, teachers, all crammed between the hallway and the offices. She cried heart-wrenchingly. Her white dress was wrinkled from her own grip. Her phone lay on the ground, the screen still lit. Even though the live stream had been cut off, those few sentences she had said were already being screen recorded. The homeroom teacher hurried over. Shen Qingyang, calm down first. Shen Qingyang shook her head. I can't calm down. They all agreed to hand in blank papers together. They signed. They tricked me into handing in alone. This is collective deception. It's bullying. He Chuan stood at the classroom door. Explain clearly. Who first proposed handing in blank papers? Shen Qingyan's crying paused for a moment, then she started shedding tears again. I just brought up an idea. You all pushed me to the front. Meng Zai picked up the scattered score registration form from the floor and organized it. An idea requires a promise not to answer 4 subjects. An idea requires you to be the first to hand in. An idea requires you to repeatedly ask us before the exam if we'd follow through with each question. Shun Qingyan's face grew paler, the voices of the onlookers around grew quieter. She said that herself. Then how can she blame others? The whole class has scores, but only she actually handed in blank. Shun Qingyang seemed stung by these voices and suddenly covered her ears. Stop talking, all of you, shut up. The discipline director quickly arrived. The 2 staff members from the city were also there. They were originally at the school to handle follow-up materials. Now they happened to catch her making a scene publicly. The staff glanced at the scattered papers, then at the homeroom teacher. Pause the score registration for now. The relevant students should go to the meeting room. Shun Qingyang immediately looked up. I'm going too. I'll tell them everything they've done, He Chuan said flatly. Perfect timing. We want to hear it too. In the meeting room, the atmosphere was colder than last time. Shun Qingyan's parents arrived quickly. Her mother hugged her as soon as she entered. Qingyang, what exactly happened with your results? Shun Qingyang buried her face in her mother's arms, crying so hard she couldn't speak. Her father stood to the side, his face ashen. He had already learned from the school that she left 4 subjects blank, but seeing the other students' scores firsthand was clearly a heavier blow. The staff member opened the laptop. Classmate Shun Qingyang, you say the whole class conspired to deceive you. Please explain the specific content of the deception. Shun Qingyang wiped her tears. They signed an initiative. They said they would hand in blank papers along with me. The staff member asked, whose name was first on the initiative. Shun Qingyang bit her lip. It was mine. Who was written as the voluntary initiator in the initiative. She didn't speak. Who was recorded in the audio as the first to hand in a blank paper. Her tears kept falling. But they agreed too. He Chuan slid a printed document across the table. The spot where we signed was under respondent. Yi Tang signed as witness. You signed as initiator. We didn't sign to agree to skip the exam. We signed to prove you said it. Shun Qingyan's head snapped up. You admitted it. You set me up. I looked at her. If someone doesn't plan to deceive, they wouldn't be afraid to leave evidence. Her lips trembled even more violently. A staff member tapped the table. This isn't the time for arguing. We've already reviewed the exam records. Only Shun Qingyang submitted blank answer sheets, either early or on time. For all 4 subjects, the other students all answered normally, with no abnormal communication records. When those words landed, the meeting room fell into dead silence. Shun Qingyan's mother seemed to have all strength drained from her, slumping into her chair, but Shun Qingyang suddenly let out a faint laugh. So you're all satisfied now? I got 0, you got high scores, you ruined me like this, and you still want to play innocent. Yaroshu stared at her. When you were the city's top scorer in your last life, did you look at our zeros the same way? This time, he didn't lower his voice. Everyone in the meeting room heard it. The homeroom teacher frowned. Yao Shu, what are you talking about now? Yao Shu's eyes were red. Teacher, just think I'm crazy, but I just want to ask her one thing. Last time, when she stood in front of the camera and said she never encouraged anyone, could she sleep at night? Shun Qingyang froze completely. She looked up at Yao Shu, her pupils shrinking. He Chuan also looked at her. Meng Zai also looked at her. I also looked at her. In that moment, Shun Qingyang finally understood. She thought she was the only one who came back with memories, but in reality, every single person she had pushed into the abyss had come back too. A broken sound escaped from her throat. You all, the staff member couldn't understand what was being said, but could see her reaction was off. Student Shun Qingyang, do you have any other evidence? Shun Qingyang suddenly pulled a USB drive from her bag. Yes, I have evidence that they forced me. She pressed the USB drive onto the table. Her fingertips trembled so much she could barely hold it. When you hear this, you'll know who the real victim is. When the USB drive was plugged into the computer, the meeting room was so quiet only the sound of the fan remained. Shun Qingyang sat up a little straighter. Her eyes were still red, but there was a hint of desperate ruthlessness in her expression. I looked at her, and my heart sank instead. She hadn't brought this out on a whim. She had prepared it long ago. The staff member opened the first audio file. Yaroshu's voice came out first. Hand in a blank paper. That's big enough. Then Meng Zai's voice followed. Qingyang, just tell us what to do, and we'll cooperate. Then He Chuan, Since you're the initiator, we'll follow your lead." The audio stopped there. Shen Qingyang immediately lifted her head. "You heard it, they were guiding me. They deliberately put me on the spot." Her mother grabbed at it like a lifeline. "Right, they forced Qingyang," but He Chuan was very calm. "Keep playing it." Shen Qingyang's face changed. "This section is already enough to show the problem." He Chuan looked at the staff member. "Please check the file length and waveform. This isn't the complete recording." The staff member didn't say anything. They directly opened the audio file information. The file was only 1 minute and 8 seconds long, but the original recording He Chuan had submitted to the school was 26 minutes. The staff member opened the second file. This time, it was a few chat screenshots. In the screenshots, someone said they wanted Shen Qingyang to hand in her paper first. Someone said after she handed it in, they would take the exam normally. Someone said let her taste what it's like to get 0. And at the very bottom, my name appeared, Yi Tang. In that instant, everyone looked at me. Shen Qingyang finally let out a hint of a smile. "Are you still going to say you weren't the ringleader?" I looked at those screenshots. The avatar was mine, the name was mine too, but the tone in the chat bubbles was laughably unfamiliar. I said, "This wasn't sent by me." Shen Qingyang immediately jumped in. "Of course not. You wouldn't admit it." Meng Zai suddenly spoke up. "The group name here is wrong." The staff member looked at her. Meng Zai pointed at the top of the screenshot. "Our temporary group was called Tomorrow. In this screenshot, the group name is Tomorrow's Dawn." Yaroshu also leaned in to look. "And this too. My profile picture was changed a long time ago. The photo she's using is from my sophomore year." Profile picture. He Chuan pulled out his phone. "The original group chat is still there. So are the chat logs. From the group's creation until now, these sentences don't exist." The staff member asked He Chuan to hand over his phone and began checking each line. Shen Qingyang's smile faded little by little. Her mother was about to say something, but the staff member had already looked up. "Shen Qingyang, what's the source of these screenshots?" Shen Qingyang's voice tightened. "Someone sent them to me." "Who?" "Anonymous." "Through what method?" She couldn't answer. The staff member's face turned cold. "Falsifying evidence will make the situation much more serious." Shen Qingyang suddenly stood up. "I didn't falsify anything. They're the ones who tricked me first. They're the ones who made me get a 0. I just wanted to prove I wasn't wrong." The homeroom teacher closed her eyes. "Qingyang, don't you understand yet? Your mistake isn't the 0, it's that you wanted others to get 0s too." Those words hit her like a slap. All the color drained from Shen Qingyang's face. She suddenly laughed. The laugh was soft, but it sent chills down everyone's spine. "You all think I'm wrong. But why? In the last life, they handed in blank papers because they were stupid. In this life, I handed in a blank paper because you ruined me." The meeting room fell into an absolute silence. Her father jerked his head up. "What do you mean by last life?" Shen Qingyang realized what she had said. Her face shifted dramatically. She tried to salvage it, but it was too late. Yaroshu laughed with red-rimmed eyes. "Finally said it." Meng Zai stared at her. "So you remember that in the last life, you got a 0 because of us, and you remember that you didn't hand in a blank paper yourself." He Chuan's voice was low. "And you definitely remember what you said to the reporters later." Shen Qingyang shook her head. "No, I didn't. I misspoke just now." But no one believed her anymore. The adults couldn't understand rebirth, but they understood one sentence. She knew that others had gotten 0s because of her in the past, and she knew that she hadn't gotten one herself. The staff member frowned, as if about to press further. Just then, a new folder suddenly popped up on the computer screen. There were hidden files on the USB drive. The folder name had only 5 characters. Yi Tang Disposal Plan. Shen Qingyang lunged forward to pull out the USB. He Chuan grabbed her wrist. The staff member's voice turned icy. "Don't move. Open it." The moment the hidden folder was opened, Shen Qingyang froze completely. Inside wasn't just one file, there were 7 in total. The first document was called Public Opinion Steps. The second was Yi Tang's Weaknesses. The third was Parental Pressure Scripts. There were also several screenshot templates and edited video clips. No one spoke in the meeting room, only the sound of the mouse clicking, over and over, like slaps landing on Shen Qingyang's face. The staff member opened Public Opinion Steps. The first line read, "First, seize the identity of the victim. The second line read, "Don't admit to initiating the proposal, just say you had an emotional breakdown." The third line read, "Portray Yi Tang as someone jealous of top students." The fourth line read, "If others get scores after the results come out, immediately emphasize that they collectively set you up." Shen Qingyan's mother's expression slowly changed. It was as if she was finally seeing the other face hidden behind her daughter's tears. Shen Qingyang lunged forward, her voice trembling and shrill. "It's not mine. This USB isn't mine." The staff member looked up at her. "You took it out just now with your own hands." Shen Qingyan's lips trembled for a long time. She turned to her mother again. "Mom, I didn't. I really didn't write that." But this time, her mother didn't immediately hold her. She just stared blankly at the computer screen. The second document was opened. Yi Tang's weaknesses appeared on the projection. Below it, every line was clearly written. Personality cold, doesn't like to explain, family is ordinary, parents rarely come to school. In the last life, she didn't hand in a blank paper along with them, so she was the easiest to portray as selfish if she steps forward to argue. Say she feels guilty if she doesn't respond. Say she's tacitly admitting it. I looked at those words, and my heart was strangely calm. In the previous life, I never understood why Shen Qingyang only targeted me. In the class group now, the answer was right in front of me. It wasn't because I had done something wrong, it was just because she had chosen me. They had chosen a silent person. They had chosen someone who didn't like to argue. They had chosen someone they thought would never fight back. He Chuan's fingers slowly tightened. Meng Zai's eyes reddened. Yaroshu stared at the screen and let out a laugh. "Written in such detail, and you call this just stress?" Shen Qingyang whipped her head toward him. "Shut up." The moment she yelled, she realized the meeting room was full of people. She immediately started crying again. "I really didn't know. Someone put those into my USB drive." The staff member didn't let her off. He continued opening the file on parental pressure tactics. Inside, it read, "The mother is responsible for crying and pleading. Emphasize that the daughter hasn't eaten for days. Emphasize that she's just a child. Emphasize that if something goes wrong, the whole class will be held responsible. Do not talk about the blank exam itself. Do not talk about the content of the proposal. Only talk about her mental state and how she was ganged up on by classmates." Shen Qingyan's mother finally couldn't stand it anymore. She took a half step back and gripped the back of a chair. Her voice was hoarse. "Qingyang, did you teach me to say these words?" Shen Qingyang looked up, her tears falling even harder. "Mom, I was just scared. I was really scared." Her father slammed his palm on the table. "You were scared, so you went to hurt others." That sound made her shoulders flinch. From before the college entrance exam until now, for the first time, she was truly speechless. The staff member copied and sealed all the files. He also had the school teacher's sign on site. The head teacher stood nearby, his face so grim it looked like he had aged several years overnight. He looked at Shen Qingyang, his voice very low. "I always thought you were just thinking the wrong way. Now it seems you knew exactly what you were doing from the very start." Shen Qingyang shook her head. "No, I didn't mean to." She had said that sentence too many times, so many times that no one was willing to listen anymore. The staff member closed the computer. "Student Shen Qingyang, you are suspected of providing edited materials and fabricated chat records. You have also repeatedly made public accusations against your classmates. These materials will be submitted together." Shen Qingyang jerked her head up. "What will happen?" No one answered immediately, but the color had already completely drained from her face, because she finally understood. A score of 0 was not the end. Every single nail she had buried with her own hands was now starting to hammer back into her. When the meeting ended, she suddenly rushed in front of me. "Yi Tang, are you satisfied now?" I looked at her. "You're asking the wrong person. The one who should be asking that is the people you destroyed in your past life." Her breath caught. He Chuan stepped up from behind me. "Shen Qingyang, we didn't come back to watch you cry. We came back to finish our own exam papers." Shen Qingyang's gaze shattered bit by bit. The cicadas outside the window suddenly started chirping loudly, very noisy, like that rewritten summer, finally refusing to stay silent for her anymore. In the end, Shen Qingyang's matter wasn't suppressed by the school. The city issued an official handling statement. The statement was very restrained. It only said that a certain candidate from No. 3 high school had proposed an inappropriate initiative before the college entrance exam, spread false information afterward, provided incomplete recordings and suspicious screenshots, and that the related materials had been handed over for further investigation. It didn't name her directly, but everyone knew who it was because before that, she had already started live streaming, posted videos, and caused a scene at the school gate. She had desperately tried to package herself as a victim, but in the end, she was the one who had blocked all her own paths. Her zero score was not changed, it couldn't be changed for blank answer sheets. With clear records from the exam hall, no one stopped her from writing, no one submitted her paper for her, no one held her hand down. She sat in the exam hall and sent 12 years of hard work out, sheet by sheet in her past life. She made others send theirs away in this life. It was her turn on the day the results were finalized. Many people in the class cried. Not necessarily because their scores were very high, but because everyone had taken back their own lives. Meng Zai's mother held her in the hallway and cried for a long time. She said, "As long as you can go to college, that's good. No matter where, it's good." Meng Zai cried too, but there was light in her eyes. In her past life, she had been dragged into the mud by that zero-score exam paper and couldn't climb out even after 3 years of retaking classes. In this life, her score was enough to get her into the school she wanted. When she showed me her application form, her fingers were still trembling. "Yi Tang, can I really fill this in?" I nodded. "You can." She smiled, and tears fell again. Yaroshu's mother bought bubble tea for the whole class as she sent the messages. She cursed him under her breath. Scoring 588 and daring to cry like that. Pathetic. Yaroshu was stubborn. I was sweating. But when he turned around, the redness in his eyes was visible. To everyone, He Chuan was the steadiest. He had the highest score in the class. The homeroom teacher looked at his report card and patted him on the shoulder. "Not bad." He Chuan lowered his eyes. "I almost didn't have this report card." The teacher froze for a moment, then he said nothing. He probably didn't understand how heavy those words were, but we all understood. It wasn't almost, it was had already lost it once. During those days of filling out college applications, Shen Qingyang never came to school again. Her mother came once. She had lost a lot of weight. She handed the homeroom teacher a statement, saying that the videos and posts online wouldn't be uploaded anymore. She also wanted to apologize on behalf of Shen Qingyang, but the words got stuck in her throat. In the end, she only asked in a low voice, "Is there any way she can retake the exam?" The teacher was silent for a long time. "Whether she can retake it depends on herself, but first, she has to admit what she did." Shen Qingyan's mother covered her face and cried softly. This time, no one comforted her because everyone's soft-heartedness had almost turned into a knife. Later, I saw Shen Qingyang once outside school. She was standing at the entrance of a print shop, a stack of flyers for retake programs in her hand. She was wearing that white dress, but she no longer looked like the clean, beautiful city's top scorer on camera. Her eyes were dark, her lips cracked, her whole body looked like it had been dried out by the summer sun. She saw me too across the road. Neither of us moved. First 20 seconds left on the red light. She suddenly smiled. It was a light smile, carrying an indescribable resentment. She spoke. Her voice was broken by the traffic. "Yi Tang, what if I hadn't signed back then?" I looked at her. "Then you should have taken the exam properly." The smile on her face disappeared. "But would you all have let me go?" The green light came on. The crowd passed between us. I didn't answer because she still didn't understand. It was never that we wouldn't let her go. It was that she wouldn't let go of anyone she could use. On the day of confirming our college choices, the homeroom teacher posted a group photo in the class chat. It was taken on graduation day. Everyone was standing in the sunlight, smiling foolishly and brightly. Shen Qingyan's seat was empty, but this time, no one felt regret. That evening, He Chuan sent a message in the temporary group chat. "The recordings and materials are all kept, but from now on, we don't have to monitor them every day." Meng Zai replied, "Yeah." Yaroshu sent a meme, "New life, booting up." I looked at the screen and suddenly smiled. Outside the window, the cicadas were buzzing in waves. This summer, finally, no longer belonged only to her lies. When the admission letters started arriving one after another, another red banner went up at the entrance of No. 3 high school, He Chuan's name was at the top, Meng Zai's was also near the front, my name was in the upper middle. When Yaro Shu found his name, he stood in front of the red banner for a long time. He raised his hand and touched that line of characters, then he said in a low voice, "This time, it's real." No one laughed at him because we all knew that what he touched wasn't just a red banner. It was a life that had been snatched back. The homeroom teacher asked us to come back to school to pick up our files. The sun was blazing that day. The fan in the classroom was still spinning. The countdown to the college entrance exam on the top right of the blackboard had long been erased. Only a little chalk dust remained, floating in the sunlight. I sat back in my last row seat. There was still a shallow scratch on the corner of the desk that I had made that day. On the day before the exam, I was sitting here, watching Shen Qingyang walk up to the podium. Her eyes were red, and she said she wanted to change the system. Her voice trembled, and she said we should be the sparks in the past life. The fire burned everyone in this life. The fire only burned back into her own hands. He Chuan walked over and put a bottle of water on my desk. "What are you thinking?" I said. "I'm thinking, it's finally over." He looked at the podium. "It's over." Meng Zai handed out a stack of photos to everyone. Graduation group photos, classroom photos, and a mess of photos taken at the school gate after the exam. Yaro Shu picked one up and laughed loudly. "How did I end up looking so ugly?" Meng Zai rolled her eyes at him. "When have you ever looked good?" The classroom finally had real laughter, not the forced cheer of surviving a disaster. It was the noise that youth was supposed to have. When the homeroom teacher came in, he was holding the file bags. He handed them out one by one. When he reached me, he paused. "Yi Tang, when you get to university, don't always try to carry everything on your own." I was stunned for a moment, then I nodded. "I understand, teacher." He smiled slightly. Fine lines appeared at the corners of his eyes. "All of you, go live your lives well. Don't look back." When those words fell, the classroom fell silent for a moment. Then Yaro Shu was the first to shout, "Teacher, we'll come back to visit you." The homeroom teacher shot him a glare. "Cut it out, just don't fail any courses in university." Everyone laughed again. Before leaving school, I made one last trip to the notice board. A disciplinary notice was posted there. Shen Qingyan's name still wasn't written out in full, but every sentence pointed to her. Improper advocacy, false reporting, forged materials, disrupting school order, follow-up to be handled jointly by relevant departments and families. The paper was curled from the sun. I looked at it for a few seconds, then turned to leave. Suddenly, a voice came from behind me. "Yi Tang." I turned around. Shen Qingyang stood in the shadow of a tree. She had lost a lot of weight, her hair wasn't tied up neatly, and her face no longer carried that perfectly calculated fragility. She looked at me, her eyes without tears, only a numbness born of emptiness. "My parents signed me up for a repeat class in another city. I'm leaving tomorrow." I didn't say anything. She lowered her head and laughed softly. "They said, as long as I'm willing to take the exam again, I still have a chance, but I know, it's different now." The wind blew through the camphor trees, the leaves rustled. She lifted her head. "Don't you all think I deserve this?" I looked at her. "You still have a chance to retake the exam. Last life, a lot of people didn't." Her face paled. "Do you have to talk like that? You're the one who had to ask." She was silent for a long time, then she said quietly, "I just wanted to win. I didn't want to be pushed down by others anymore. I wanted everyone to see me." I said, "So you made others lose in your place?" Her lips trembled. This time, she didn't retort. Maybe she finally realized that some words were useless now. From a distance, Yaro Shu's shout came. "Yi Tang, let's go." I acknowledged with a sound. Shen Qingyang watched me turn around and suddenly asked, "What if there's a next time?" I stopped in my tracks. "There won't be a next time." Her eyes flickered. I turned back to look at her. "Even if there is, we won't believe you again." With that, I walked toward the school gate. He Chuan, Meng Zai, Yaro Shu, and many other classmates were standing in the sunlight waiting for me. We walked down the road under that red banner. This time, there was no heroism, no slogans, no one needing to be anyone's spark. We were just leaving school ordinarily, holding our admission letters ordinarily, rushing toward our own lives ordinarily. But this ordinariness was something we fought for over 2 lifetimes. As I walked out of the school gate, I looked back at 3 high school blackboards, fans, countdowns, blank papers, tears, the things that trapped us were finally left behind. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a new message in the temporary group chat. Each one had changed the group name. No longer tomorrow. It was new life. I looked at those 2 words and smiled. Then I turned off the phone, raised my head, and walked into the bright wind of midsummer.